Luke skipped my name so smoothly that, for a second, I thought I had missed it. He stood at the microphone with Dad's leather folder open in both hands, reading the thank you speech Dad had spent 3 nights writing. Mom had gotten her whole paragraph. So had Mr. Dogherty, Dad's first supervisor at the printing plant, who had been dead for 11 years. Even the night shift mechanic who used to leave powdered donuts in Dad's locker got a sentence. Then Luke turned a page and said, "And of course, both of Alan's children want him to know how proud we are." Both of Alan's children. The room softened around me in that way rooms do when you're trying very hard not to react inside one. Glasses clinked. A waiter passed behind my chair carrying a tray of coffee cups. Luke smiled at me from the podium as if he had just included me in something. I looked at Dad. His chin lifted. His eyes moved from Luke to the open folder, then found mine. That was the moment I knew. Dad hadn't taken me out. Luke had. And Dad, sitting 6 feet away from the microphone, knew it too. He lowered his eyes and let my brother keep reading. 6 hours earlier, I was on the floor of the venue's ladies' room with a sewing kit between my teeth. This was not unusual for a Bennett family event. Mom stood in front of the mirror holding the hem of her navy dress up around one knee while I tried to repair a loose stitch. She had bought the dress specifically for Dad's retirement dinner, though she kept calling it that old thing in case anyone complimented her and accidentally made her feel visible. "Don't sew it to my slip," she said. "I wasn't planning to. You did that at your cousin Renee's wedding. I was 19, and yet it happened." I pulled the thread tight and took the needle from my mouth. "You've been saving that grievance for 17 years? I don't save grievances. I have an excellent memory. That was Mom." Diane Bennett did not hold a grudge. She maintained a historically accurate archive. She smoothed the dress over her hips and turned sideways. At 67, she was still pretty in a neat, deliberate way, with silver hair cut into the same chin-length bob she'd worn since I was in college. She'd put on lipstick too early and already chewed most of it off. "Does this make me look boxy? It makes you look like a woman wearing a navy dress." "Mara, you look beautiful." She gave me a suspicious glance in the mirror, then smiled despite herself. "Your father's gonna cry. Dad does not cry. He cried when they discontinued his truck. He got quiet. His eyes watered. The heater was broken. In July?" I clipped the thread and sat back on my heels. "There. You can go accept your award for surviving 42 years of marriage to a man who thinks black pepper is showing off." 39, she said. 42 is the job. The job had better hours. Mom snorted, which was the laugh she used when she didn't want to reward me too much. My phone buzzed on the counter. The florist had arrived at the wrong entrance. Before I could reach for it, Mom picked it up, read the preview, and handed it to me. "Why are they calling you?" "Because I'm the contact person. I thought Luke was handling the room. Luke is handling the speech." She said that, like it answered the question. In our family, giving Luke one visible task counted as shared labor. I put the sewing kit back into the side pocket of my canvas tote. It was a wide gray bag from a public radio pledge drive, big enough to carry a laptop, emergency flats, 12 spare place cards, 2 phone chargers, stain remover, Dad's marked speech draft, and apparently the structural integrity of the Bennett family. Mom followed me into the hall. "Did you eat?" "I had half a turkey sandwich." "When?" "Recently enough to remember the turkey." She caught my arm before I could head toward the lobby. "I mean it. Don't run yourself sick tonight." It was tender, the way she said it. That was what made my mother difficult to explain. She noticed when I was tired. She just also believed my tiredness was the safest resource in the room. The venue was a converted brick warehouse near downtown Columbus, the kind of place that charged extra for exposed pipes and called folding chairs industrial. Dad's company had paid for the room, dinner, and bar. I had only done the invitations, seating chart, slideshow, dietary list, photo table, centerpieces, and 6 other things no one would remember unless they went wrong. I found the florist in the loading area arguing with a dishwasher. "The eucalyptus is supposed to go around the framed photos," I told her. She looked relieved to see someone with an answer. And the white roses? Dining tables? Nothing tall enough to block people's faces. The dishwasher pointed toward the ballroom. I told her, "You told me to put everything by the bar," the florist said. "I thought you were liquor." She stared at him over an armful of greenery. "In fairness," I said, "flowers and liquor both improve retirement parties." By the time I got back inside, Luke had arrived. You always knew when Luke entered a room because the room became an audience. He was 33, 3 years younger than me, with Dad's broad shoulders and Mom's instinct for lighting. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie and carried the leather folder under one arm. His girlfriend, Paige, walked beside him in a green dress and heels that made me worry about the old wood floor. "There she is," Luke said, opening his free arm. I accepted a sideways hug because his other hand held a coffee. "You're late. I'm 7 minutes late. You were supposed to be here 20 minutes early, so I'm 13 minutes late." Paige gave me an apologetic smile. She was new enough to the family that she still looked embarrassed when Luke turned criticism into arithmetic. "The folder," I said. Luke tucked it more securely under his arm. "Safe. Dad's clean copy is inside. Don't add anything weird. Define weird. No jokes about Mom being his second wife. She is his second wife. His first wife was the printing plant. We've all heard it." Paige lifted one hand. "I haven't." "You'll hear it twice tonight," I said. Luke smiled at her. "See? Family tradition." He had brought Dad a bottle of 20-year-old bourbon in a polished wooden box. He showed it to me, and I'll admit it was a good gift. Dad would display it for a year before opening it, then complain it didn't taste 20 times better than the cheap stuff. "I got him a watch, too," Luke said. "You got him a watch and bourbon?" "Big night." "It is." There must have been something in my voice because his smile shifted. "What did you get him?" "I had his work jacket quilted. That blue one? Pieces of it. The rest was held together by machine oil." He blinked. "That's actually really good." It was such a sincere compliment that I almost felt guilty for resenting the question. Almost. Luke looked toward the ballroom. "How's Dad?" "Nervous. He keeps pretending he's looking for the restroom." "Has he practiced the speech?" 3 times. He gets stuck near the end." "Emotional?" "He says his throat is dry." "So emotional. Don't rush him. If he needs a minute, let him take one." Luke tapped the folder. "I know how to read, Mara. I know." "Do you?" Paige touched his wrist. "Not a reprimand exactly. More like lowering the volume." I changed the subject. "Mom's in the bridal suite." "This place has a bridal suite?" "It has a room with a mirror and a chair. That's apparently enough to marry in." He kissed my cheek and went to find her. Dad arrived through the ballroom doors 10 minutes later, wearing a dark suit I had picked up from the cleaners that morning. Alan Bennett did not enjoy clothes that required separate hangers. He walked carefully, as he had ever since cardiac rehabilitation, though he denied walking carefully if anyone mentioned it. He stopped when he saw the photo table. There was Dad at 19, skinny and serious beside his first press. Dad at 28 with a mustache Mom claimed had ruined an otherwise good decade. Dad at the company picnic, asleep in a lawn chair with an empty paper plate on his stomach. In the last picture, taken 2 weeks earlier, he stood beside the industrial press on his final shift, one hand on the control panel. "Where'd you get that?" he asked. "Harold sent it." "He should have deleted it." "You look happy." "I look old. You contain multitudes." He glanced at me. "You're getting smart." "Just now?" Dad reached out and adjusted one frame by 1/2 inch. Then he adjusted it back. "You bring the speech?" "Luke has the clean copy." His forehead creased. "What?" I changed a line. "You called me last night with the change." I fixed it. "The one about Dougherty? And the loading dock fire." "He didn't start that." I removed the word allegedly. Dad's mouth twitched. He looked toward the doorway where Luke was showing Mom the bourbon. Mom had one hand pressed to her chest as though he had donated an organ. "You kept the other one?" Dad asked me. "The draft? The one with my writing on it. In my bag." He nodded. "Good." That draft had blue ink running through nearly every paragraph. Dad had crossed out any sentence that sounded remotely proud of himself. He had changed my devoted wife to Diane because he said devoted made her sound like a bird dog. Beside the paragraph about me, he had drawn an uneven box and written, "Keep this. Important." I had read those 2 words more times than I wanted to admit. People began arriving in waves. Dad's old co-workers slapped his shoulder and told stories about machinery that had nearly killed them. Mom circulated as if she had personally employed everyone. Luke stood near the bar with Paige and Dad's regional manager, making him laugh within 4 minutes. I moved through the room, solving small emergencies. A vegetarian meal had vanished. One of the framed photos slid off its stand. Aunt Carolyn decided her table was too cold and relocated herself beside a space heater without consulting the seating chart. When I finally sat down, dinner was already being served. Dad caught my eye from the next table. "You all right?" he mouthed. I nodded. He pointed at my plate and made an eating motion. That was Dad, too. He could see me across a crowded room. He simply couldn't always see what holding the room together cost. After dessert, the company president gave Dad a plaque and a watch. Luke whispered to me that he was glad he'd kept the receipt for his own watch. I laughed hard enough to spill coffee into my saucer. Then Dad approached the microphone. He unfolded his reading glasses, put them on, took them off to clean them, and put them on again. The room quieted. "I wrote some things down," he said. "Mara said that would keep me from wandering." A few people laughed. Dad looked at me and added, "She usually does." The first lines went well. Then his voice caught while thanking Mom. He stopped, stared at the page, and shook his head once. Luke was already rising. "I can finish it," he said. Dad hesitated, then handed him the leather folder. Luke took the microphone with an easy smile. He did the hard part. "Now you're stuck with the child who likes attention. More laughter." He read beautifully. Better than Dad would have, honestly. He gave every sentence warmth. He made the room lean toward him. Then he reached the place where my paragraph should have been. "And of course," he said, "both of Alan's children want him to know how proud we are." He turned the page. I looked at Dad. Dad looked at the folder. And then he looked away. Luke paused after the last line as if he'd written it himself. For a beat, nobody moved. Then Dad's co-workers stood, chairs scraping the floor, and the applause came up around us. Luke closed the folder and reached for Dad. Dad rose into the hug with one hand on Luke's back and the other pressed over his mouth. Someone near me said, "What a son." I turned to see who it was, but the woman was already lifting her phone to take a picture. Mom went next. She wrapped both arms around Luke and kissed his cheek. Paige stood behind them, smiling with her hands clasped at her waist. When Luke finally stepped away, Dad looked toward me. I was close enough that he couldn't pretend not to. He held out one arm. I stood and went to him because 40 people were watching and because, until that exact moment, I had never considered that I might not. "Beautiful speech," I said against his shoulder. His hand stopped on my back. "Your brother did a nice job with it." "Yes." Dad pulled away. He looked as though he wanted to say something, but Mr. Halpern from accounting appeared beside us with both arms raised. 42 years, and this bastard never bought me lunch." Dad laughed, and the moment closed. I sat down and drank the rest of my cold coffee. The party continued with the awkward energy of an event that had already reached its emotional high point, but still had 45 minutes left on the contract. People formed a line to speak to Dad. Several told Luke he should be on television. Aunt Carolyn stole a centerpiece by placing it directly into her purse, though the vase was clear glass and stuck out 6 inches. I stayed busy. Busy was useful because it looked exactly like normal. I found a cardboard box for the plaques, gathered loose cards, reminded the venue coordinator that the slideshow laptop belonged to me, and took 3 photographs of Mom, with women whose names I didn't know. Every few minutes I caught myself searching the room for Dad. Every time he was talking to someone else. Luke was at the bar telling Paige's hand surgeon story to Dad's regional manager. Paige had cut 2 fingers opening a package, required 4 stitches, and somehow Luke's version included a moment where he kept everybody calm. Paige saw me watching and gave me a small wave. I waved back. Mom came up beside me carrying 2 flower arrangements. "Can we take these?" "I think so. I paid for them. The company paid for them. Your father worked for the company. Same thing. That is not how corporations work." She lowered her voice. "Carolyn took one." I saw. "If Carolyn gets one, I'm taking 2. I transferred the flowers into the box with Dad's plaque. "Careful. The vase is wet." "You've barely said a word." "I've said several." "You know what I mean." I adjusted the tissue paper around the glass. Luke read it well. "Oh, didn't he? I was so worried when your father froze, but Luke just stepped right in." She smiled toward him. "He's good in those moments. Those moments. The bright, visible ones that lasted 4 minutes and ended in applause." Mom touched my elbow. "And you did all this. It was lovely. Thank you. I hope you know that." There it was. The private footnote. I picked up the box. "Where do you want these?" "In our car. Your father will crush them if he carries them." Dad was standing near the photo table, holding the bourbon box while Luke explained something with both hands. I carried the flowers past them. "Hey, Mare," Luke called. "Don't disappear. We need a family picture." I kept walking, putting these in the car. "She never stops," he told Paige. I heard the affection in it. That made it worse. Outside, the air had cooled. The venue's parking lot sat between the warehouse and a row of dark office buildings, all brick and narrow windows. Mom had given me her keys because her dress had no pockets, and I dug through my tote with one hand while balancing the box against my hip. I found 2 pens, the stain remover, a roll of double-sided tape, my emergency flats, and the envelope from the caterer. "No keys, of course," I muttered. I set the box on the hood of Dad's car and emptied half the bag onto the passenger seat through the open window. The spare place cards came out first, then the sewing kit, then several folded sheets of paper caught beneath my wallet. Dad's draft. I knew the paragraph before I unfolded it. I could see it in my head, Dad's cramped blue handwriting pressed hard enough to dent the paper. I still read it. When my heart trouble put me on the sidelines, Mara never once made me feel weak for needing her. She changed her schedule, drove more miles than she will ever admit, fought with insurance people, and kept food in our house when Diane and I were too tired to think about it. She is the person who kept our family standing while the rest of us were still pretending nothing had fallen. Dad had crossed out heart attack and replaced it with heart trouble. He had changed paid bills to kept food in our house, probably because even gratitude had to preserve his pride. The box around the paragraph was dark and uneven. Keep this. Important. A car door slammed behind me. I folded the pages automatically. A couple from Dad's table walked past, the husband carrying his suit jacket over one shoulder. "Great party," he said. "Thank you. Your brother gave one heck of a speech." He did. They walked away holding hands. I found Mom's keys beneath the sewing kit, loaded the flowers into the back seat, and stood there with the draft pressed against my leg. Maybe Dad had changed his mind after I printed the clean copy. Maybe he had asked Luke to cut the paragraph before the party. Maybe Luke had skipped it accidentally. Maybe 2 sheets had stuck together. I could build explanations faster than most people could build IKEA furniture. It was another skill my family had encouraged. When I went back inside, the room was almost empty. Staff members had begun lifting water glasses from the tables. Dad and Mom were near the entrance saying goodbye to the company president. Luke's leather folder lay on the gift table beside a stack of empty envelopes. I walked toward it slowly. The folder had belonged to our grandfather. Brown leather cracked at the corners, with a brass clip inside to hold papers in place. I opened it. Dad's speech was still under the clip. The pages were numbered because I had numbered them. 1, 2, 3, 5. Page 4 was gone. I stared at the bare strip of leather beneath the clip. A faint indentation showed where the missing page had been pressed between the others. The paragraph about me was not the only thing on page 4. Dad had also thanked 2 former shift supervisors and a woman named Joyce who used to organize the company Christmas drive. Luke had skipped them too, which gave him cover. But none of those paragraphs were boxed in ink. None of them had been the one Dad called important. Looking for my autograph? Luke came up behind me carrying his bourbon glass. His jacket was unbuttoned now and his cheeks were flushed. I turned with the folder open in my hands. "Where's page 4? His eyes dropped to it. It was quick. Barely anything. But Luke had never been good at the first second of a lie. "What, page 4? He took a sip. "I don't know. Maybe Dad lost it. I put the clean copy in this folder myself. Okay, it was here when you arrived. Then maybe 2 pages stuck together. You turned from 3 to 5. His mouth tightened. "Mara, the speech was long. I held up the folder. Did you take it out?" Behind him, a server rolled a cart of dirty plates through the doorway. Luke waited until the wheels stopped rattling. I tightened it. "You removed 1 page. The company president told me we were running over. The company president was outside smoking during the speech. I'm not saying he told me at the microphone. Did you take it out before you came here?" Luke glanced across the room. Mom was helping Dad into his coat. Paige stood a few feet from them, looking at her phone. "Can we not do this here?" "That depends on what this is." He set his glass down too hard. Bourbon jumped over the rim and landed on his thumb. He wiped it on his pants. "I read it in the car," he said. It was repetitive. Dad had already thanked the family. He thanked Mom. And us. He thanked both of his children after you removed the part where he thanked me. His voice dropped. "You hate public attention. I hate being sung to in restaurants. That's not the same thing. Come on. You would have been uncomfortable. You weren't protecting me from being uncomfortable. I was trying to keep the night from turning into some weird comparison." "What comparison?" He gave me a look that asked me not to make him say it. I waited. Luke pressed his lips together. The paragraph made it sound like I wasn't there. You weren't. I came home. Twice. I had work. So did I. You lived 20 minutes away. I lived 45 minutes away then. You know what I mean? I almost laughed. He sounded exactly like Mom. He moved closer, angling his body so nobody else could see the folder between us. Paige was here. Jim Rafferty was here. I've spent 2 years convincing that man I'm ready to lead a department. And then Dad's gonna get up there and tell everybody how you single-handedly saved the family. Well, I did what? Sent a fruit basket? It was a nice fruit basket. "Mara, you took my name out of Dad's speech because your boss was watching? I took out 1 paragraph that would have embarrassed me and embarrassed Dad. Dad boxed it." "What?" I unfolded the marked draft. Luke looked at the blue ink. His face changed, but only for a second. "Keep this," I read. "Important. He writes notes all over everything." He noticed it was gone. Luke looked toward Dad. That was answer enough. "He looked at you," I said. Then he looked at the folder. I was already reading. What was he supposed to do, wrestle me for the microphone? He could have corrected it afterward and turned his retirement dinner into a public family argument? Great ending. Paige looked up from her phone. Her gaze moved from Luke to me and stayed there. Luke saw her looking and softened his voice. "I shouldn't have taken the page out. Fine. I'm sorry. But it was 1 paragraph, Mara. You know Dad appreciates you." "Do I?" "Oh, don't do that." "Do what? Make this bigger than it is." Mom called my name from the entrance. Luke took the folder from my hands and closed it. "We'll talk tomorrow." He walked away before I could answer. Dad was waiting beside the door with his coat buttoned wrong. Mom held his plaque under one arm and her purse under the other. "Ready?" she asked me. "Your father shouldn't drive after that bourbon." Dad looked at the pages in my hand. His eyes settled on the blue box. "Mara," he said quietly. I waited. Mom glanced between us. "What?" Dad reached for the plaque. "Nothing. We'll talk at home." Mom waited until we were in the car to ask again. She sat beside me in the passenger seat with the plaque upright between her knees. Dad was in back with the flowers because Mom didn't trust him to keep the vases from tipping and apparently believed assigning him personal responsibility for them was the solution. "What was that about?" she asked. I adjusted the mirror. Dad's face appeared between two arrangements of white roses. "What was what about?" he said. "You and Mara doing your silent telegraph routine. We don't have a silent telegraph routine. You absolutely do. It's how you discuss me when I'm standing there. I wasn't discussing you." "Well, that's a relief." The engine was still running. People were leaving around us, headlights moving across the brick wall. I could have answered. Instead, I shifted into reverse. Dad said, "Watch the truck. I see it. It's close. It's 12 feet away. Still close." I backed out without hitting the truck, a feat Dad received in silence. Mom was too curious to let the subject die, but she respected an audience. She talked about the dinner all the way to their house instead, who had aged well, who had not, which former co-worker had brought a woman Mom was almost certain was not his wife. Dad corrected her twice and then gave up. I kept seeing his face during the speech, not surprised enough to interrupt, not confused enough to investigate, just uncomfortable. At a red light, Mom turned in her seat to inspect the flowers. "One of the roses is bent. It'll survive," Dad said. "You don't know that. It's already cut from the ground, Diane. The prognosis is poor." She looked at me. He had 2 bourbons, clearly. Dad smiled in the mirror, hoping I would. I looked back at the light. Their house was a brick ranch on a quiet street where all the maples had grown large enough to make the sidewalks uneven. I had a key. Luke had lost his twice and now used the garage code, which Mom changed every few months because she believed burglars kept historical records. The living room lamp was on. I had turned it on before we left so they wouldn't come home to a dark house. Dad carried the plaque inside. Mom took one vase. I took the other because, despite everything, I couldn't stand there and watch rose water spill across the back seat. In the kitchen, the foil pan of leftover lasagna I'd put in their refrigerator that morning sat exactly where I'd left it. Dad set his plaque on the table, beside a stack of mail I had sorted into 3 piles for him. The room was full of evidence against me. Mom placed the flowers by the sink. Now. What happened? Dad took off his coat. I laid the marked speech draft on the table. Luke removed page 4. Mom glanced at the pages, then at me. From what? The speech. Her eyebrows rose. Why? The paragraph about me was on it. What paragraph? I looked at Dad. He folded his coat over the back of a chair with unnecessary care. I thanked Mara for helping us when I got sick. Mom's expression shifted. Oh, not outrage. Recognition. You knew about it? I asked. Your father showed it to me. When? A few days ago. She touched the edge of the paper. It was lovely. Luke took it out. I heard you. He didn't skip it by accident. He removed the page before he came. Mom pulled out a chair and sat. Why would he do that? Because his girlfriend and his boss were there, and he thought the truth would make him look bad. Dad finally faced me. He told you that? He said the paragraph made it sound like he wasn't there. He wasn't there, Mom said. The words came so quickly that I almost smiled. Then she added, but your father didn't need to make a point of it in front of everybody. There it was. Dad rubbed a hand over his mouth. I wasn't making a point. I know, Alan. I'm saying Luke might have read it that way. Luke read it exactly the way it was written. No, apparently he didn't. He took it out. They looked at each other, briefly united by the possibility of making this about wording. I pulled out the chair across from Mom. Did you know what was missing while he was reading? She looked at Dad. Dad sat between us. I noticed he went from the part about your mother to the plant. That's not what I asked. I knew something had been shortened. You looked right at him. He was standing at a microphone in front of my entire department. You could have said something after. What did you want me to do, Mara? Take the microphone back and announce your brother had edited the speech. You could have said, there was one more person I wanted to thank. Dad's mouth opened, then closed. It was such a simple sentence, I could see him realizing that. Mom reached for my wrist, but I moved my hand to my lap. "Your father was emotional," she said. "You saw him. He could barely speak." He hugged Luke. Luke helped him. Luke edited me out and then helped Dad read the edited version. "Don't say it like that. How should I say it?" Mom's face tightened. "You're making it sound deliberate." It was deliberate. I mean, your father. You're making it sound as though he chose to hurt you. I looked at Dad again. He seemed smaller without the suit coat. His tie was loose, his white shirt creased across the stomach. There was a water spot on one lens of his glasses. "I didn't want to embarrass your brother," he said. The honesty landed more cleanly than an excuse would have. "Why not?" He frowned. "Why not? Why was his embarrassment more important than what you wanted to say to me? It wasn't. You chose it. I had seconds to decide. You've had 36 years. Mom stood. "That is not fair." "No, it isn't. I mean to him, I know what you meant." Dad pushed his glasses higher on his nose. Luke shouldn't have taken the page out. "I'll talk to him." "That isn't the same thing." "What do you want from me?" "I want to know why you stayed quiet." "I told you." "No, you told me what you were preventing. You didn't tell me why you assumed I should be the one who paid for it." The kitchen became very quiet. The refrigerator motor kicked on. A loose vent above the stove rattled, a sound I had been meaning to fix for 2 weeks. Dad looked down at the draft. His finger rested near the blue box, not touching it. "Because I knew you would understand," he said. He said it gently, almost proudly. For years, those words had worked on me. They had come after changed birthday plans, canceled rides, money loaned and never mentioned again. Luke needed more support. Mom was overwhelmed. Dad didn't have the energy for conflict. I would understand because I was sensible, because I was strong, because I wasn't going to make the situation worse. Understanding was the family chore no one had to ask me to do. "That isn't an apology," I said. Dad's eyes lifted. "I didn't say it was." Mom pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Everyone is exhausted. This was a good night." "For Luke, for your father," Dad said. "Diane?" "No, I'm sorry. It was. People came out for him. They told him what he meant to them. He got through the whole thing without his heart acting up, and now we're standing in the kitchen taking it apart because Luke made a stupid decision. And Dad backed it." "I did not back it," Dad said. "You protected it." He leaned away from the table. "I am not going to be accused of conspiring against my own daughter because I didn't improvise the perfect response in front of a room full of people. I didn't accuse you of conspiring. You said I protected him. You did. I was trying not to cause a scene. At whose expense?" Dad stood too quickly. The chair legs scraped the tile. Mom's hand flew toward him. "Alan, I'm fine. Sit down." I said I'm fine. The three of us froze in the old formation. Dad angry, Mom frightened, me already half out of my chair to steady him. He saw me move. Something like shame passed across his face. I sat back. Dad did not fall. He stood with one hand on the table, breathing hard through his nose, furious that his body had entered the argument. Mom rounded on me. "This is what I mean. What do you mean?" "There is a time and place." I stared at her. It wasn't even cruelty. She believed it. My hurt had bad timing because Dad had retired, because Luke was sensitive, because she was tired, because someone's heart might misbehave. I folded the draft along its existing crease and put it in my tote. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Home." "You drove our car. I'll get a ride." Dad sat down slowly. "Mara." I waited by the doorway. I meant what I wrote. That nearly undid me. He believed the truth of the paragraph should be enough, as if gratitude kept hidden was still a gift, as if I could take those pages home and warm my hands over them. "I know," I said. "That's the part I can't get past." I left Mom's keys on the counter. The night air had turned cold enough to hurt my teeth. I walked to the end of the driveway before opening a rideshare app, mostly because I didn't want them watching me stand under the porch light. A car pulled up before I booked one. Paige lowered the passenger window. Luke sat behind the wheel. "Mara," she said, "we can take you back." I almost said no. My car was still at the venue, and the app estimated $28 before tip. Luke leaned across the console. "Get in." Not an apology. Not even a question. I opened the back door. The leather folder was on the seat. I picked it up, slid in, and set it between Luke and me like a third passenger. Nobody spoke for the first few blocks. Paige watched the dark houses through her window. Luke drove with both hands at 10 and 2, which he only did when angry. Finally, he said, "Did you tell them?" "Yes." "And?" "Dad said he'd talk to you." Luke laughed once. "Of course. What does that mean? He'll give me the disappointed face. Mom will stand behind him making the stop gesture. Then he'll call tomorrow and ask if I can help move the patio furniture." Paige turned toward him. "You removed the page on purpose?" Luke's jaw tightened. "You heard us. I heard pieces." It was more complicated than it sounded. "No," I said. "It was exactly as complicated as it sounded." Luke's eyes found mine in the mirror. "Did Dad tell you he asked me to read it?" "He asked after he couldn't. He texted me yesterday and said he might need me to take over. That surprised me." Luke saw it. "He didn't tell you that, did he?" "No. He said he didn't want to disappoint everyone if he got choked up. So I read the speech ahead of time. I was trying to make sure it worked, and then you removed me. I removed one page." Paige looked down at her hands. Luke exhaled sharply. "I said I was sorry. You said you shouldn't have done it. Then you explained why you had to. What do you want, Mara? Should I pull everyone back into the room and do it again? I want you to stop acting like the only two choices were humiliating you or erasing me." He turned into the venue parking lot too fast. My car sat alone beneath a light at the far end. Luke pulled beside it and put his vehicle in park. Paige said, "Maybe you should let her finish." Luke stared through the windshield. "I don't have anything else to say," I told her. That wasn't true. I had years of things to say. I got out with my tote and the marked draft. Luke rolled down his window as I unlocked my car. "Sunday at 1?" he called. Every Sunday for 9 years, lunch had been at 1. Luke arrived at 1:15 with wine. Mom took credit for the menu. Dad carved whatever I had cooked. "I'm not coming," I said. Luke blinked. "What? I won't be there Sunday. You have the roast." He said it with genuine alarm. The roast was in my refrigerator thawing. "I know." I got into my car and closed the door before he could ask what they were supposed to eat. The roast was exactly where Luke had said it would be, on the bottom shelf of my refrigerator in a glass dish, already rubbed with garlic and rosemary. I stood there with the door open and looked at it. It was too large for one person. I had bought it at a butcher shop across town because Dad disliked the grocery store's cuts and considered uneven marbling a personal insult. Beside it were carrots, celery, 2 pounds of red potatoes, and the horseradish. Mom claimed she didn't like but always put on everything. The refrigerator beeped. "I hear you," I said. I closed the door, took Dad's marked draft from my bag, and carried it to the small dining table by my window. My apartment was quiet. Usually I liked that. I had chosen the place because it faced a row of mature trees instead of the parking lot, and because nobody could leave medical paperwork on my counter without first being invited inside. I unfolded the speech. "Keep this. Important." I put it face down. 5 minutes later, I turned it over again. My phone buzzed with a message from Luke. "Mom says you left upset. We should talk when everybody's calmer." I typed, "I was calm." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. That's not what I meant. I didn't answer. Mom texted at 7 the next morning. "Do you have the large, white serving platter?" I woke with one arm numb under the pillow and stared at the message. "Yes. Can you bring it tomorrow?" "No." Her reply came fast. "Why not? Because I'm not coming tomorrow." The phone rang before I could set it down. I let it ring twice, which was the closest I had ever come to making my mother wait on purpose. "Mara," she said when I answered, "what do you mean you're not coming?" I'm not coming." "I thought you said that last night because you were upset." "I said it because I'm not coming." "What are we supposed to do about lunch?" It was an honest question. That was the astonishing part. "You can make something." There was a pause. "Your father was looking forward to the roast. The roast isn't emotionally attached to him. This isn't funny. I'm not joking." Mom lowered her voice, though there was no reason to. "Are you trying to punish us?" "No, I don't want to spend tomorrow cooking for everyone." "Since when?" "Since now." "Mara, I understand that what Luke did hurt your feelings. My feelings. A small, damp thing I had carried into the kitchen and expected everyone else to clean up. But this family has had Sunday lunch for years," she continued. "You can't just cancel it." "I'm not canceling lunch. I'm canceling my work." "What work?" "You make a meal. I shop for it, prepare it, bring half my kitchen to your house, serve it, clean up, and take the dishes home. We help. Dad carves. That is helping. Luke opens wine. He brings it. I buy that too most weeks. You know he pays you back. He Venmo'd me $11 in March. Then tell him. I shouldn't have to submit an invoice to attend lunch with my own family." Mom went quiet. I rubbed my eyes. Morning light came through the blinds in narrow white bars. Finally, she said, "This is not about lunch." "No." "Then don't make it about lunch." "I'm not. I'm making lunch about lunch for the first time." She exhaled through her nose. "Your father wants to talk to you. I'm sure he does. He barely slept. Neither had I, but sleep was another resource my parents seemed to believe only they could deplete. Tell him I'll call later. I think you should come over." "I'm not coming over." "Mara." "Mom, I'm going to hang up now." She gave a soft, incredulous laugh. "You're going to hang up on your mother? I'm telling you first." Then I did. I sat in bed holding the silent phone and waited for guilt to kill me. It didn't. It did, however, make coffee taste worse. I spent Saturday doing things I had postponed because of the retirement dinner. I returned a pair of shoes, dropped off dry cleaning, and sat in a car wash while blue foam covered the windows. At 11, Dad called. At 11:15, he called again. He did not leave a message either time. At noon, Luke sent a photograph of a white serving platter from Mom's cabinet. Found one. Crisis averted. It was an oval casserole lid. I wrote, "That's not a platter." He responded with a thumbs up. Dad called a third time while I was carrying groceries upstairs. I answered because I had 6 sparkling water cans balanced against my chest and couldn't locate the part of myself willing to ignore him again. "Hello? Did I catch you at a bad time?" "I'm carrying groceries. I'll call back." "No, I'm almost inside." I unlocked my door, pushed it open with my hip, and set the bags on the counter. Dad waited. He'd never liked talking over background noise. Even on the phone, he needed a room to settle. "I spoke to your brother," he said. "And?" He admitted he took the page out. He admitted that to me last night. He knows it was wrong. "Does he?" "He said so." "Did he apologize to you?" "To me?" "It was your speech." Dad cleared his throat. "That's between Luke and me." "Right. You don't need to say it like that." "Like what?" He didn't answer. I took a carton of eggs from the bag and put it in the refrigerator. The roast sat underneath, occupying more space than anything else. "Your mother says you're not coming tomorrow." "I'm not. She's upset." "Is she upset that I won't be there or that the roast won't? That's unfair." "I'm asking. You know she wants you there." Then why did the first thing she asked about was lunch? Because people have to eat, Mara. I laughed before I could stop myself. Dad went silent. "Sorry," I said. "No, you're not. No." He breathed out slowly. "I should have said something last night." The eggs were still in my hand. It wasn't a full apology. It was barely half of one. Still, my body reacted before my mind did, softening toward the opening. "Yes," I said. "You should have. I didn't know how to do it without making everything worse. For Luke. For everybody. Not for me. No, not for you. I put the eggs away. Dad said, "I'm sorry you were hurt." The opening closed. I leaned against the counter. "Do you hear what you just said?" "What? You're sorry I was hurt, like I tripped on something." I said I was sorry. You're sorry about the result. You're not sorry about the decision. What would you like me to say? Something you mean. I mean that. Then it's not enough. He made a frustrated sound. I can't go backward and change what happened. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? I looked through the kitchen doorway at the speech lying on my dining table. I don't know yet. That was the truth, and Dad hated it more than an accusation. Problems in our family were supposed to arrive with instructions, preferably instructions I had already printed. "Well," he said, "when you decide, let us know." He hung up first. I ate cereal for dinner. The roast stayed in the refrigerator. The next morning, I woke at 6:30 because my body knew I had 6 hours of cooking ahead of me. For a few seconds, I lay there mentally arranging the day. Roast into the oven by 9:30, potatoes peeled by 10. Drive to Mom and Dad's at 11:30 with the food packed in insulated carriers. Luke would text at 12:40 asking if we needed anything, which meant he would already be in his car and unavailable to obtain it. Then I remembered. I rolled over and went back to sleep. At 12:54, Mom called. I watched the phone vibrate across my coffee table. At 1:02, Luke called. At 1:11, Dad called. At 1:20, the family group chat came alive. Luke sent a picture of Mom's kitchen counter. On it sat 2 grocery store rotisserie chickens, a plastic container of potato salad, and a bag of dinner rolls. "Tradition lives," he wrote. Mom replied, "Those chickens are cold." Luke wrote, "They're cooked." Mom responded, "That is not the same thing." I laughed so suddenly I startled myself. Then a picture appeared of Dad at the table, looking toward the camera with a paper napkin tucked into his collar. He looked tired. My laugh went away. I put my phone face down and walked into the kitchen. The roast was still there. I could cook it now, I thought. I could drive it over. It would be late, but Dad would forgive late for beef. I took the dish from the refrigerator and set it on the counter. Rosemary clung to the fat in dark green needles. I could smell the garlic through the plastic wrap. My phone rang again. Luke. I answered. "Tell me you're on your way," he said. "No. Mom bought chickens. I saw. They're cold." "They're supposed to be. She says the breast meat is dry. It usually is. And Dad is acting like he likes it, which is making her madder. That does sound difficult." "Mara." "What? This is ridiculous." I peeled one loose corner of plastic from the roast, then pressed it back down. "What exactly is ridiculous? You made your point." "I haven't made a point. I stayed home." "Yes, to make a point. I stayed home because I didn't want to spend my day cooking for people who think appreciating me privately is good enough. That's not what anybody thinks. It's what happened." Luke lowered his voice. I apologized. "No, you didn't. I said I was sorry. You said you were sorry right before telling me it was one paragraph and I was making it too big." "Okay, fine. I'm sorry without any explanation." "Better?" "No." He groaned. "What do you want me to do? Heat the chicken." "I'm serious." "So am I. 350 for 15 minutes. Cover it with foil." There was a pause. "Mom says it'll dry out more. Then eat it cold. You're enjoying this." I looked at the roast on my counter. "No," I said. "That's the strange part." I put it back in the refrigerator. At 2:30, someone knocked on my door. I knew it was Luke before I looked through the peephole. He stood in the hallway holding the casserole lid Mom had mistaken for a serving platter. When I opened the door, he raised it between us. "I brought your platter. That belongs to Mom. Then I brought Mom's platter. It's a lid." He turned it over, frowned at the little knob in the center, and lowered it. "Can I come in?" "No." His eyebrows rose. "Seriously?" "Yes." "Mara, I drove all the way over here. 20 minutes, traffic, on Sunday." He looked past me into the apartment. From where he stood, he could see the edge of the refrigerator and the dish inside it. His face changed. "You still have the roast?" "Yes, you had it ready. I prepared it Friday. And you just left it sitting there?" "It's meat, Luke. It doesn't feel rejected." He ran a hand through his hair. "Dad barely ate. Dad ate chicken. He wanted the roast. I wanted my paragraph." Luke stared at me, the glass lid hanging from his fingers. Then he said very quietly, "I didn't think you'd care this much." For the first time, he sounded less defensive than confused. I believed him. That was worse than if he had meant to hurt me. "I know," I said. I closed the door before either of us could pretend that was forgiveness. Luke knocked once after I closed the door, not loudly, just 2 knuckles against the wood, a polite little sound that said he still believed I had misunderstood the ending of the conversation. I stood on the other side without moving. After a minute, his footsteps went down the hall. When I opened the door, Mom's casserole lid was leaning against the wall. I left it there until evening. The roast had to be cooked. That was the practical truth, though it felt suspiciously like surrender when I took it from the refrigerator. I put it in the oven at 350, exactly as I would have for Sunday lunch, and the smell filled my apartment until every room felt borrowed from my parents' house. I made the potatoes, too. Habits are efficient that way. My hands knew what to do even while the rest of me objected. At 6, I sat alone at my dining table with a slice of roast beef, 4 potatoes, and Dad's thank you speech face down beside the salt shaker. The meal was excellent. This annoyed me. I packed enough leftovers for several lunches, froze half the meat, and took a photograph of my plate. For one petty second, I considered sending it to the family group chat. I deleted the picture instead. Monday morning, I carried 2 containers of roast beef into the office. I worked as a project coordinator for a small engineering firm, which mostly meant 6 people promised 6 different versions of the same deadline, and I made them all believe we had agreed on one. It was a job I was good at, and, unlike my family, they put that in my annual review. Tessa Morgan looked into the break room while I was labeling the containers. "Did you bring catered meat?" "It's roast. That's a roast for 12. It has experienced a change in circumstances." She came in and opened the refrigerator. Tessa had worked across the hall from me for 4 years and treated the communal refrigerator as a mystery box designed specifically for her. She was 40, recently divorced, and wore bright red glasses that made every expression look more decisive. "Can I have some?" "Yes." "Are you dying?" "No." "Did you kill somebody?" "Not yet." She took one of the containers and hugged it to her chest. "I don't need context." At 10:20, my phone calendar flashed a reminder. "Dad, cardiology, 10:30 tomorrow." I had entered the appointment 6 months earlier while standing at the cardiology desk. The note included the address, parking garage level, physician's name, updated medication list, and a reminder to bring Dad's blood pressure log, which he kept on a yellow legal pad beside his recliner. At 10:22, Mom texted, "Tomorrow, pick us up at 9:40 instead of 9:45. Construction on Broad. No hello. No question mark." I looked at the message while the cursor blinked inside an email on my monitor. "I can't drive tomorrow," I wrote. Her reply appeared almost immediately. "You took the morning off. I canceled it. Why?" "Because I'm not going." 3 dots pulsed. "Your father needs someone with him. You're going. You know I don't understand half of what that doctor says. Ask questions. He talks too fast. Tell him to slow down." Another pause. "This is about the speech." I put my phone in a drawer. It rang inside the drawer 3 minutes later, buzzing against a stack of binder clips. I let it stop. Then it rang again. Tessa appeared at the edge of my cubicle, chewing a piece of roast beef. "This is offensively good." "Thanks. Your desk is ringing." "I know." "Should I answer and tell them you've joined the circus?" "They'd ask when I'll be back." She studied me for a second. "Family?" "Family." "Do you need me to stand here until it stops?" The phone went quiet. "No," I said, "but thank you." She nodded and returned to the break room with my lunch. Dad called at 11. I answered because ignoring him felt childish, and being the mature one was proving difficult to quit all at once. Your mother says you won't take us tomorrow. She can drive. She doesn't like that garage. Neither do I. You know where the elevators are. So does she. Dad was silent long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Then he said, I thought we were talking about Sunday lunch. We were. And now it's my doctor's appointment. You're acting like I'm canceling your appointment. You're canceling the ride. You have a car. My doctor told me not to drive if I'm anxious. Are you anxious? I'm annoyed. Then you're safe to drive. That almost made him laugh. I heard the breath catch in his nose. Mara. What? I don't like this. The simplicity of it softened me more than his apology had. I don't either, I said. Then why are you doing it? Because I don't know how to keep helping you without pretending nothing happened. You think making us struggle will fix it? I don't think driving yourselves to a scheduled appointment counts as struggling. Your mother gets turned around in that garage. Then ask Luke. He works. So do I. Dad exhaled. He knew my job mattered. He had bragged about it to co-workers at the retirement dinner. Still, when Luke had work, it was a fixed object everyone had to walk around. Mine was a folding chair. I'll talk to him, Dad said. Good. This isn't how families handle things. How do families handle them? We talk. We did. You told me you knew I'd understand. I was trying to explain, and I understood. I always understand. That's the problem. He ended the call without saying goodbye. 20 minutes later, Luke texted, You seriously can't take Dad tomorrow? I wrote, Correct. I have a client meeting at 10. Move it. I can't just move a client meeting. I can't just move a project review. Mom doesn't know the questions to ask. Then go with them. He didn't respond for nearly an hour. Can you email me? The doctor info? It's in the family calendar. What family calendar? I stared at the message. 2 years earlier, after Mom scheduled Dad for an echocardiogram on the same morning as a dental procedure, I had created a shared online calendar. I sent invitations to both parents and Luke. Mom had accepted. Dad had printed his. Luke apparently believed family calendar was a figure of speech. I forwarded the invitation again. His answer was a screenshot of the login page. Password? There isn't a password, except the invite. I don't see an invite. Check spam. Why would it go to spam? Because even your email knows you don't participate. He sent back a middle finger emoji. Then, a minute later, a thumbs up. Luke did take them. Mom called me from the parking garage at 9:50 the next morning to report that he had missed the correct entrance twice. We are now on the roof, she said. Follow the signs for outpatient parking. There are too many signs. Put Luke on. He doesn't want to talk to you. I heard Luke in the background say, I can hear her. Then he can hear me say, level 3, I told Mom. Dad's voice came from farther away. We're on level 5. Go down 2 levels. Those are full, Luke called. Then park on 5 and take the elevator. Where's the elevator? Mom said. There's no need to be sarcastic. I'm not there. You can still be sarcastic. I closed my eyes. Mom, look for the blue wall. The elevators are beside it. A moment later, Luke said, Found it. Of course he did, Mom said warmly, as if he had discovered the Northwest Passage. I hung up before I said something that would become the subject instead. At lunch, Tessa handed me my empty container. That was life-changing. It was meat. Don't diminish your gifts. The phrase caught me off guard. She noticed. What? Nothing. Was it poisoned? No. Good. I had seconds. She sat across from me at the break room table and peeled the lid off a yogurt. Trivia tonight, you should come. I can't. Why? I opened my mouth. Tuesday nights, I called Mom to review Dad's medications and confirm the week's errands. But that wasn't an appointment. It was just something I did. I guess I can, I said. Tessa pointed her spoon at me. That sounded terrifying for you. It's a big commitment. There may be questions about state capitals. There will absolutely be questions about state capitals. I went. Our team came in fourth because Tessa insisted Maryland's capital was Baltimore and refused to be bullied by facts. I got home at 10 with a cheap plastic medal around my neck and 2 missed calls from Mom. There was also a voicemail. "The appointment was fine," she said. Her voice was clipped. "The doctor changed one of your father's medications, but Luke wrote it down. I think. He had to leave before we finished because of his meeting, so we took a cab home. Everything is handled." She paused. "We're coming by tomorrow afternoon." The next day, Mom and Dad arrived at my apartment carrying a casserole and a thick blue folder. Mom handed me the casserole first. "Chicken divan. You hate chicken divan. Your father likes it." Dad said, "I tolerate it. You asked for seconds." I was hungry. They came inside before I invited them. Dad moved toward the dining table and stopped when he saw the marked speech still lying there. Neither of us mentioned it. Mom placed the blue folder on my counter. "What's that?" I asked. "Just a few things." I opened it. Insurance statements, the medication change, a letter from their real estate agent about preparing the house for sale, a printed checklist with items highlighted in yellow. I closed the folder and held it out to her. "No." Mom didn't take it. "No what? I'm not keeping this. It's only paperwork." "Then you keep it. You understand it better." Luke was at the appointment. Luke wrote the new dosage on the back of a parking receipt. "Then tell him to transfer it somewhere useful." Dad shifted beside the table. "We also need to start on the basement Saturday. The realtor's coming next week. I'm not available Saturday." Mom stared at me. "Since when?" "Since you assumed I was. Mara, we have lived in that house for 31 years. I know. We can't clear it alone. Ask Luke." The blue folder remained suspended between us. Mom finally took it. Her face did something I had rarely seen. Not anger exactly, but fear, stripped of its usual instructions. "Luke doesn't know how to handle these things," she said. I looked at Dad. He looked away. "Neither did I said. "You just kept handing them to me until I learned." Mom held the folder against her chest. "That's different," she said. "How? You've always been organized. I wasn't born knowing Dad's insurance group number. No one said you were. You're saying Luke can't learn. I'm saying he gets frustrated. So do I." Dad moved away from the dining table. "We'll handle it." Mom turned to him. "Alan, we will. Your cardiologist wants a blood pressure reading every morning. You forgot today." "I didn't forget. I chose not to do it. That's forgetting with an opinion." Despite myself, I laughed. Dad's eyes flicked toward me. For half a second, the three of us were back in our usual shape. Mom managed, Dad resisted, and I translated both of them into something livable. Then Mom held the folder out again. I didn't take it. She lowered her arm. "All right," she said. "Message received. I'm not sending a message. Of course you are. I'm telling you what I will and won't do, which happens to communicate something." Dad took the folder from her. "Diane, leave it." She looked at him with betrayal so pure you would have thought he had joined a rival family. "What about Saturday? We'll call Luke. He has plans." So did Mara. Mom's mouth closed. That was the first time Dad had said it. Not kindly, exactly, but clearly. He tucked the folder beneath his arm. "Thank you for the casserole," I said. Mom glanced at the dish on my counter. "You don't have to eat it, I know. If you don't like it, throw it out. I didn't say I didn't like it, you said I hate it. You do hate it. That doesn't mean it isn't good." Dad opened the door. This conversation has become ridiculous. Mom followed him into the hall, still offended by the casserole on several levels. Dad paused at the threshold. "The realtor comes Thursday. We need to clear enough of the basement for her to see the walls. Okay, you have boxes down there. I'll get mine." "Saturday?" I hesitated. He wasn't asking me to run the workday. He was telling me my things were in the way. That was fair. "I'll come at 10 and take my boxes." Mom looked back. "There are at least 6. Then I'll take 6. You'll need help carrying them. I'll manage." The elevator doors opened at the end of the hall. Dad said 10 o'clock and walked away. Mom didn't say goodbye. The chicken divan was mostly mayonnaise wearing a breadcrumb hat. I ate 2 servings Thursday night. On Friday, Luke called while I was leaving the office. Mom says you're coming tomorrow to get my boxes. Great. You can tell me what they want done. They want the basement cleared enough to see the walls. Which walls? The basement ones. I'm serious. So am I. Wind lifted my hair across my mouth as I crossed the parking lot. I could hear traffic behind Luke and a turn signal clicking. He said, "Dad told me to buy contractor bags. Mom says we're not throwing anything away. Both of those statements can be true. Not in that house. That's your problem now. See, this is what I mean." "What do you mean?" "You know exactly how impossible they are. But now you're acting like I'm lazy because I don't magically know the system. There is no system. There is. It's you." I stopped beside my car. That was probably the most accurate thing he had ever said about our family. Luke continued, "Mom says the Christmas decorations stay. Dad says half of them have mouse damage. Mom says there have never been mice. There have been mice. I know. One of them died in my hockey skate. You screamed. I was 11. You threw the skate into the yard. I was grieving. I smiled before I could help it. Then Luke said, 'Can we just get through tomorrow without you making everything a lesson?' The smile left. I'm collecting my things. And then I'm leaving. You're really going to watch us struggle and walk out. I've been watching you walk out for years. That's not the same. Why? Because you're good at this." There it was again, the compliment shaped like a handcuff. I unlocked my car. Buy medium boxes, not large ones. Large boxes get too heavy. Use blue tape for keep, yellow for donate, red for trash. Take photos before you unplug any electronics, and don't let Mom make a maybe pile. Luke was quiet. "Write that down," I said. "I am. See you tomorrow." I hung up before giving him anything else. He was already in the driveway when I arrived at 9:58. The back of his SUV stood open, filled with flattened boxes, tape, work gloves, and enough black contractor bags to dispose of the house itself. Paige sat on the tailgate drinking coffee. "You came," she said, "for my boxes." Luke said that part several times. She wore jeans, boots, and one of Luke's old college sweatshirts. I had only seen her dressed for family dinners or dates, neat and slightly watchful. This version looked more comfortable. "Did he recruit you?" I asked. I volunteered before I understood the assignment. Luke came out of the garage carrying a red plastic bin. Mom put donation clothes in the trash pile, and now she thinks the tape colors are confusing. "It's been 8 minutes," I said. "Exactly." Paige handed me an extra coffee. "Peace offering. From you or him?" "Me." "He doesn't know I bought it. I took it. Then I accept." Inside, Mom stood in the kitchen wearing gardening gloves and looking through a box of serving utensils. She had set aside 3 cheese knives, though no one in our family had served cheese that didn't come pre-sliced. Dad was in the basement doorway. "You're late," he said. I looked at the clock on the microwave. "It's 10:01. I said 10. I was in the driveway. That isn't here." Luke came behind me. "Good morning to you too, sunshine." Dad frowned at the red bin in his hands. "I told you those decorations were trash. Mom says keep. The mice say trash." Mom called from the kitchen. There were no mice. Luke met my eyes. I raised both hands. My boxes. They were beneath the stairs, exactly where I remembered. 6 brown cartons with Mara written across the sides in Dad's block printing. One held college textbooks I had somehow believed would remain relevant forever. One held kitchen items from my first apartment. 3 were labeled clothes, though I suspected Mom had been adding things to them for years. The last said personal. I slid it forward. A stack of photo albums had been placed on top. When I moved them, one fell open to a Christmas picture from the year Luke was 24. He stood beside the tree holding a new laptop. I sat on the arm of the couch wearing an apron, half turned toward the kitchen. "Dad wants the metal shelves to stay," Luke said behind me. I closed the album. "He can keep the shelves. He wants them moved to the other wall, then move them. They're bolted in, so they're staying. He says he can get them loose. From across the basement, Dad called, "It's 4 bolts." "Great," Luke said. "You do it. I can't kneel that long." "Then why are we moving them?" "So the realtor can see behind them. The realtor does not care about a cinder block wall. You don't know that." Luke looked at me. "Help?" "No." Dad's face hardened. "Nobody asked you to do it yourself, Mara. I'm not doing it at all." A silence dropped between us. Mom appeared at the top of the stairs. "Why is everyone standing around?" "I'm getting my boxes," I said. "Before we've sorted them?" "They're mine. There might be family things inside. Then you shouldn't have put them in boxes with my name." Mom came down 2 steps. "I think your grandmother's linens are in one." "Do you want them?" "I don't know. That means no." "That is not what it means. It has meant no for 31 years. Dad moved toward the shelves, reached for a wrench on the workbench, and knocked a jar of screws onto the floor. They scattered beneath an old card table. Mom gasped as if they were diamonds. Luke swore. Paige came down the stairs, took in the scene, and silently began picking up screws. My body moved automatically. I set down my coffee and bent to help her. Then I stopped. Luke was standing 2 feet away. I straightened. "You dropped something." "I didn't drop it. Pick them up anyway." His expression sharpened. "Seriously?" Paige looked up from the floor. "Luke." He stared at me another second, then crouched beside her. Dad pretended not to notice. I carried the first 2 boxes to my car. On my 3rd trip, I found Luke and Dad arguing over the metal shelves. Dad insisted the bolts were standard. Luke had found 3 different socket sizes and none fit. "You're turning it the wrong direction," Dad said. "I'm not. Let me see it. You can't kneel. I can bend." "You just said you couldn't." I said I can't stay down there. Luke stood and shoved the wrench into Dad's hand. "Then show me." Dad bent, gripped the bolt, and immediately turned it in the same direction Luke had. Luke made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a bark. Dad straightened. "It's stripped." "Now it's stripped?" "It was probably stripped before." "Right." Dad's cheeks reddened. "If you don't want to help, go home." "I am helping." "You've complained since you got here, because every time I do something, you tell me I'm doing it wrong, because you don't listen." "I listened. You said red was trash. I marked trash red. Mom changed it. Don't blame your mother." "Of course not. God forbid we accurately describe Mom." "Watch your mouth." Luke threw the work gloves onto the bench. I knew what came next. He would leave. Dad would call him unreliable. Mom would cry. I would take over the shelves, the boxes, and everyone's mood. Luke looked at me. I picked up my 4th box. "You're not going to say anything?" he asked. "What do you want me to say? That he's being impossible. He's being impossible." Dad turned toward me. "Excuse me?" "And Luke is still the person who agreed to help." Luke stared. I adjusted the box against my hip. "You can leave if you want, but I'm not staying to finish." I carried it upstairs. When I returned for the last box, Luke was on the floor beside the shelves again. Paige held a flashlight. Dad stood 3 feet back with his arms crossed, managing not to speak through visible effort. Luke glanced up at me. 4 bolts, he said. "Apparently. I'm going to get them out." "Okay." He expected praise. I could see it. I left without giving him any. At home, I opened the box marked personal. Inside were old letters, tax returns, framed certificates, and a small wooden jewelry box Mom had given me when I turned 21. Beneath them lay a stack of birthday cards tied with kitchen string. Most were from my parents. I opened one from my 30th birthday. Dad had written, "You make things easier for all of us." At the time, I had thought it meant love. I put the card back in the envelope and reached for another. "Happy birthday to our capable girl," Mom had written. The next one said, "We don't know what we'd do without you." Then, "You always know how to make everything work." By the 4th card, I felt like I was reading job references from people who had never paid me. I retied the stack and put it in the jewelry box. My phone lit up with a photograph from Paige. Luke was kneeling in the basement beside the metal shelves, holding one rusted bolt toward the camera like a fisherman displaying a catch. Dad stood behind him with his arms crossed. The shelves had been moved 6 feet to the left. Under the picture, Paige wrote, 4 hours, no fatalities. I smiled. Then another message appeared, this one from Luke. You were right about the medium boxes. I typed, I know. I deleted it. Good, I wrote instead. His reply was immediate. Don't get emotional. I set the phone down, but the smile stayed a little longer. By Monday, the realtor had sent Mom a list of 13 additional tasks. I knew because Mom forwarded the email to me with the subject line, please advise. I did not advise. She forwarded it again 20 minutes later without comment. At lunch, I called her. What part do you need help understanding? All of it. The list is pretty clear. Reduce visual clutter. What does that mean? It means put things away. Where? I don't know, Mom. The closets are full. Then the closets need to be cleared. That isn't helpful. It's the answer. I could hear cupboard doors opening and closing on her end. The realtor said we should remove personal photographs. Okay. Why? Buyers want to imagine their own things there. Then they can imagine around us. I don't make the rules. Well, I think it's insulting. We've lived here 31 years, and now we're supposed to pretend we haven't. Her voice thinned on the last sentence. I leaned back in my desk chair. Beyond my cubicle, someone was arguing with the printer. You don't have to like it, I said. It's still probably good advice. Your father says the photographs stay, then leave them. The realtor says, take them down. Then take them down. Mara, what do you want me to say? I want you to come look at the house. No. The cupboard door stopped. We did everything you asked, she said. I didn't ask you to do anything. Luke came. Your father took his medication. I kept the folder. What more do you want? The words were so revealing that neither of us spoke for a second. You think this is a test, I said. I think you're waiting for us to fail. I'm waiting for you to handle your own lives. We are handling them. Then why are you calling me about family photographs? Because you're my daughter. Would you call Luke? Luke would say he doesn't care. So say you don't care back. I do care. Then make the decision. Mom's breath came through the phone, shaky and offended. You used to care too. I closed my eyes. I still care. It doesn't feel like it. Caring in my mother's vocabulary had always been a verb. You could not merely feel it. You had to arrive with storage bins. I have to go, I said. Of course you do. She hung up. That afternoon, I made 3 mistakes in a report. Small ones, but I hadn't made 3 mistakes in the same report since my first month at the firm. Tessa returned it to my desk with yellow tabs and no jokes. Are you okay? She asked. Apparently not. Do you need to leave? I need to fix this. The numbers aren't going anywhere. Neither am I. She pulled the spare chair from the neighboring cubicle and sat. My ex used to do this thing, she said, where if I wasn't solving his problem, I was causing it. I looked at her. I know we're not sharing, she continued. I'm sharing adjacent to you. That's subtle. I'm known for tact. I removed the first yellow tab. My mother thinks taking down her photographs is proof that I don't care about her. Are the photographs load-bearing? Emotionally, those are the worst kind. I laughed, then had to look down because the laugh changed shape halfway out. Tessa pretended not to notice. She stood and tapped the report. Fix page 3 first. The other errors repeat from there. Thanks, I'm a giver. The family group chat stayed quiet for 2 days. That silence should have been peaceful. Instead, I checked it often enough to qualify as surveillance. On Wednesday evening, a photograph appeared of Dad's living room. Every framed picture had been removed from the walls. Pale rectangles floated above the couch where the paint had faded around them. Luke wrote, "Happy now?" I stared at the words. Before I could answer, Mom replied, "No one asked you to take down all of them." Luke wrote, "The realtor did. She said depersonalize, not erase." I almost laughed at the word. Dad joined in. Put back the wedding picture. Which wedding picture? Luke asked. Ours. There are 6, the big one. They're all big. Mom wrote, the one over the piano. Luke sent a photograph of the empty wall over the piano. Dad responded, yes. Luke wrote, helpful. I put the phone face down. A minute later, Luke called. I answered. Mom is crying, he said. Put back the wedding picture. I don't know which one it is. The one where Dad has the mustache. He has the mustache in all of them. Mom's holding lilies, not roses. What color dress? White. You're hilarious. I pictured the photograph. Mom on the church steps. Dad with dark hair and the terrible mustache. Lilies bent over her arm. It has a silver frame, I said. There's a small dent in the lower right corner. I heard him moving pictures. Found it. Put that one back. The realtor said no personal photographs. Then why did you call me? Because Mom is crying. That doesn't mean you did something wrong. It usually means somebody did. Sometimes she's just sad. He went quiet. In the background, Dad said something I couldn't hear. Luke lowered his voice. Can you meet me for coffee? When? Now. I'm making dinner. It's 7:30. Yes, some of us eat after sunset. I'm at the place by your apartment. Of course you are. He knew I would come. I hated that he knew. I met him anyway. Luke sat in a corner booth with 2 coffees already on the table. He had bought mine correctly, cream, no sugar, which felt unfairly intimate after a week of being angry with him. You look tired, I said. Dad owns 4 broken oscillating fans. 3. The blue one works. He won't throw out any of them. He thinks he can fix them. He has thought that since 2009. I took off my coat. Why are we here? Luke rotated his cup between his hands. He looked older than he had at the retirement dinner, not dramatically, just enough that I noticed the lines beside his eyes were not only from smiling. I stayed Saturday, he said. I know, 6.5 hours. Paige sent evidence. Dad told me I packed the books wrong, labeled the Christmas bins wrong, and parked too close to the garage. Did you? Yes, but that's not the point. I waited. Luke looked toward the front window. You know what it's like when he decides you're doing something wrong. Yes, no, you don't. I assure you. He doesn't talk to you the way he talks to me. The defensiveness rose automatically, then stalled. There was truth in what he said. Dad corrected me, but he expected me to recover. With Luke, correction often carried the weight of prediction. Of course you forgot. Of course you took the easy way. Of course you left. You leave, I said. I leave because if I stay, he keeps going. And then I finish. I know. Luke said it quietly. I wrapped both hands around my coffee. When I dropped out of college, he continued, Dad barely spoke to me for 6 months. When he did, it was to ask what my plan was. You kept telling me he was scared for me. He was. You also kept telling him I was trying. You were. Were you translating, or were you lying to both of us? I looked at him. He gave a humorless smile. You made him sound softer. You made me sound better. Then everybody went back into the same room and wondered why nothing fit. I was trying to keep you from killing each other, I know, but you also made it possible for us not to deal with each other. The coffee shop's blender started behind the counter. We waited through the noise. Luke traced a scratch in the table. When I read Dad's paragraph about you, I didn't just think it made me look bad. What did you think? I thought he wrote it at me. He didn't. You don't know that. He wrote my name. Dad has praised you to criticize me my entire life. I sat back. He tells me you remember birthdays, Luke said. You answer the phone, you follow through. You don't make everything difficult. You think he says those things because he's proud of you. Sometimes he says them because he's angry at me. That doesn't make them untrue. No. It just means hearing that paragraph in front of everyone felt like him finally putting the whole case on the record. So you removed me. I panicked. You planned it before you came. I panicked early. Despite everything, I laughed. Luke smiled, then lost it. I'm sorry, he said. No explanation after it. I'm sorry I took your page out. I knew it mattered because Dad had given you something he never gives you, and I took it because I couldn't stand what it said about me. It was the apology I had wanted. It did not repair me on contact. I believe you, I said. Is that it? That's what I have right now. He nodded, disappointed but not angry. My phone rang on the table. Mom. I almost ignored it. Then she called again before the first ring had fully died. I answered. Her voice came thin and fast. Your father fell. Luke was already standing before I said a word. Is he conscious? I asked. Yes, of course he's conscious. He's yelling. That was encouraging. Did he hit his head? I don't know. He says no. Where is he? In the basement. Luke held out his hand for the phone. I gave it to him and grabbed my coat. Mom, call 911, he said. I could hear her answer from across the table. He doesn't want an ambulance. I don't care what he wants. He says if you come, you can help him up. Don't move him. He's lying on the floor, Luke. I understand that. Don't move him. I threw cash beside the untouched coffees. Luke was already heading for the door. Call now, he told her. We're on our way. He handed the phone back to me in the parking lot. Mom had not hung up. Mara, do we really need an ambulance? Yes, he's going to be furious. He's already furious. That's different. I got into Luke's SUV. Call. She did. Luke drove. He took corners too fast and apologized to me after every one as if I were a beverage he might spill. What happened? He asked. Mom's voice came through the speaker. He was bringing up a box of books. The bottom gave out. What box? How would I know? What color tape? Luke. What color? Blue. He hit the steering wheel with the heel of his hand. What? Mom asked. I packed the books in a large box. You said you used medium. I ran out. I remembered the basement wall lined with boxes. Luke had stacked some 3 high beside the stairs because Dad wanted the floor clear for the realtor. Blue tape meant keep. Books were heavy. Dad would have decided he could move them rather than wait. Did the box break while he was on the stairs? I asked. No. He got it to the top. The books fell out and he stepped backward. Into the basement? No, thank God. He fell against the hall table and went down. Where does it hurt? His hip and shoulder. Head? He says no. Did you see? I was in the kitchen. Dad shouted something in the background. Mom said, he wants to know why I'm giving a full report. Tell him because we love him, I said. I told him because he's stubborn. That works too. We reached the house 4 minutes after the ambulance. Dad was sitting on the floor against the hallway wall in his undershirt and work pants. Several hardback books lay open around him, their pages bent. The hall table had tipped sideways, spilling a ceramic bowl and 3 unopened pieces of mail. 2 paramedics knelt beside Dad while he argued that he had not lost consciousness. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway clutching his wallet and an oven mitt. Why do you have that? I asked. She looked down at the mitt. I don't know. Luke went straight to Dad. I'm fine, Dad said. You're on the floor. I can be fine on the floor. One of the paramedics looked up. Are you his son? Yes. Can you convince him to let us take him in? No, Luke said, but my sister can. Everyone looked at me. Dad's expression became wary. I stepped over a copy of the Complete Home Repair Manual. You're going. I bruised my hip. You don't know that. I know what a bruise feels like. You also have a cardiac history, changed medication this week, and may have hit your head. I didn't hit my head. Then the scan will be quick. It'll be 6 hours. Probably. I'm not sitting in an emergency room for 6 hours, then lie there for 6 hours. Mom can keep holding the oven mitt. Mom dropped it onto the counter. One paramedic hid a smile. Dad looked at Luke, hoping for disloyalty. Luke crossed his arms. I called ahead. They're serving roast. Dad glared at him. 10 minutes later, they had him on a stretcher. Mom rode in the ambulance. Luke and I followed in his SUV, this time at a speed appropriate for human organs. He gripped the wheel. That box was mine. It was a box. I stacked it too high. Dad chose to move it. because I didn't finish. He waited until nobody was there, tried to carry a box of books, and stepped backward. You didn't arrange that. I used a large box. I told you not to. Thank you, Mara. I'm not blaming you. I'm saying you made one bad packing choice, and Dad made 3 bad decisions after it. Luke glanced at me. You're defending me? Don't get emotional. His mouth twitched, but his eyes stayed fixed on the road. The emergency room did take 6 hours. Dad had no fracture, no head injury, and no damage to his replaced shoulder joint. He had a deep bruise along his right hip, a sprained left shoulder, and a doctor's order not to lift anything heavier than 10 pounds until he was re-evaluated. Dad asked whether the doctor counted individual pounds or total pounds. The doctor told him to stop looking for loopholes. Mom sat beside his bed with her purse in her lap. Luke disappeared twice to take work calls and returned both times, which I noticed. I answered questions about Dad's medication because I knew the answers. I gave the nurse the list from memory, then made Mom pull the blue folder from her bag so we could verify it. Luke had written the dosage change on the back of a parking receipt. Mom had paper-clipped it to the correct statement. You kept it, I said. She looked offended. Of course I kept it. I mean the folder. Where else would I put things? She had added dividers. The tabs were crooked and labeled in pencil, but they were there. At midnight, Luke drove us home. Dad sat in front because his hip hurt. Mom and I shared the back seat with a plastic hospital bag containing discharge papers, an ice pack, and the shirt Dad had been wearing when they cut one sleeve to examine his shoulder. Dad complained about the shirt more than the shoulder. That was a good shirt. It was from Costco, Mom said. It fit. You own 9 shirts. 8 now. At the house, Luke helped Dad inside. Dad allowed it with poor grace. I gathered the hospital bag and righted the hall table, while Mom found pillows for the recliner. The books were still scattered across the floor. I bent to pick one up. Then I stopped. Not because I wanted Dad to trip over it again, not because leaving a hazard would teach anyone anything. I stopped because I had been awake for 18 hours, had spent 6 of them under fluorescent lights, and Luke was standing beside me. Can you get these? I asked. He looked at the books. Yeah. He found a smaller box in the garage and packed them carefully. He carried it to the basement 1 stack at a time instead of filling it until it was heavy. Mom came from the living room with the discharge papers. They want him to call for physical therapy tomorrow. His primary doctor has to send the referral, I said. Can you do it on your way to work? No. She blinked. I took the papers and read them. Call the office at 8. The number is here. I have a dentist appointment at 9. Call at 8. They never answer on time. Leave a message. Mara, this is not the moment. My body was still full of the fear from seeing Dad on the floor. That fear wanted to turn itself into action. It wanted me to take the papers, make the call, create the schedule, arrange the rides, stock the refrigerator, and sleep on their couch in case Dad tried to move a television before sunrise. I could feel the old machinery starting. This is exactly the moment, I said. Mom's face changed. Your father just came home from the hospital. He is bruised. He is not helpless. He can barely stand. Dad called from the recliner. I can hear you. Good, I called back. Don't lift anything. I wasn't planning to. Luke came up the basement stairs carrying the empty large box, its bottom sagging open. I'll call the doctor, he said. Mom turned. You have work. I can call from work. You'll forget. He held up his phone. I'm setting an alarm. She looked at me as if I had orchestrated an unsafe experiment. Luke typed something, then showed her the screen. 8:05. Call Dr. Feldman. 8, Mom said. They won't answer on time. That's what I said. Then I'll call at 8:10. I took the discharge papers and handed them to him. The therapy places Dad's used before are listed in the family calendar, I said. He liked the one on Broad, except for the parking. Dad called. The therapist chewed gum. He did not like the one on Broad, I corrected. Luke folded the papers and put them in his jacket pocket. Don't lose those, Mom said. He took them back out, photographed every page, then put them in the blue folder. It was not how I would have done it. It worked. I went into the living room to say goodnight. Dad was reclined with an ice pack against his shoulder and a folded blanket over his legs. Without his glasses, he looked tired and strangely unguarded. "You all right?" I asked. "I've been better." "Any dizziness?" "No." "Nausea?" "No." "Chest pain?" "No." "Do you promise?" "Yes." I touched the side of his head, checking for a bump even though the scan had been clear. Dad caught my wrist gently. "I knew you'd come," he said. The words were loving. They were also a claim. I pulled my hand back. "I came because you fell." "I know." "That doesn't mean everything is fixed." His mouth tightened. "I didn't say it did." "You didn't have to." He looked past me toward the kitchen where Luke and Mom were arguing about whether the referral alarm needed a label. "I'm glad you came," Dad said. "That's different." "All right." I picked up my coat. Dad frowned. "You're leaving. It's after 1. Your mother made up the couch. I'm sleeping at home. What if I need help? Wake Mom." "She sleeps like the dead." "I can hear you," Mom called. Dad lowered his voice. "What if I need real help? Call 911, then call Luke and me." He looked hurt. "I meant getting to the bathroom. You just walked in from the car. With help, use the cane the hospital gave you. Mom can stand nearby. Mara. I'm not a nurse, Dad. No, you're my daughter. That has to stop meaning the same thing." He let out a tired breath and closed his eyes. For a moment, I almost took off my coat. Luke appeared in the doorway behind me. "Go home." Dad opened his eyes. "Nobody asked you." "I'm staying," Luke said. "Paige is bringing me clothes. You have work. I can work from the dining room." Dad looked from him to me. Luke lifted one shoulder. "I know where the bathroom is." It was an absurd qualification, but Dad laughed. The sound loosened something in the room. Mom handed me a container of chicken divan for the road. I took it because refusing food had never been the point. At the front door, Luke followed me onto the porch. "You good?" he asked. "No." "Me neither." I looked through the window. Dad was trying to adjust the recliner with his good arm while Mom swatted his hand away. "The referral," I said. "Alarm set. His insurance may require, I'll figure it out." I stopped. Luke nodded once. "I've got it." I walked to my car before either of us could find a reason for me to stay. I made it halfway home before pulling into a gas station and turning off the engine. My hands had begun to shake. They hadn't shaken while Dad was on the floor. They hadn't shaken in the emergency room or while I recited his medications or argued with him about the ambulance. They waited until I was alone beneath the white canopy of a speedway, parked beside an overflowing trash can. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. For several minutes, I let myself imagine the versions that had not happened. Dad stepping backward onto the basement stairs. Dad striking his head against the table. Mom finding him unconscious. Luke and me sitting over coffee while the phone went unanswered in her hand. Then I stopped, because imagining disaster had always been how I convinced myself constant vigilance was love. Dad was bruised. Luke was there. Mom knew how to call for help. I drove home. At 7:58, after less than 4 hours of sleep, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. "Luke, is it Feldman or Feldman?" "Feldman," I wrote. "Office number?" "In the discharge papers." Mom moved the folder. "Ask Mom. She's asleep. Look on the practice website." 3 minutes later, he sent, "Found it." At 8:20, referral requested. At 9:15, insurance says, "Authorization takes 48 hours. I hate them. At 9:17, Dad tried to carry coffee with the cane. At 9:18, we had words. I read each message without answering. Then I wrote, "Thank you for staying." He responded with a photograph of Dad asleep in the recliner, mouth open, ice pack slipping down his chest. He snores like a lawnmower. I saved the picture. For the next week, Luke became the center of the family group chat by necessity. He posted appointment times because Mom no longer trusted herself to remember them. He asked whether Dad could take acetaminophen with his new heart medication. He found the answer before I replied. He drove Dad to the first physical therapy evaluation and arrived 12 minutes late. Dad reported the 12 minutes to me personally. He left work late, Dad said over the phone. He came, late. Did they see you? Yes. Then it worked out. The therapist chewed gum. It was a different therapist. They all chew gum. In the background, Luke said, "Tell her you refuse to use the elevator. I don't like elevators. You took the stairs with a bruised hip." The therapist said, "Movement is good." The therapist said, "Controlled movement." Dad lowered his voice. "He's overreacting. So let him. I don't need a guard. You needed help. I needed a ride. He gave you one." Dad made an irritated sound. "You always knew when to stop talking." "No, I knew when arguing with you would become my whole day." He was quiet. I regretted the sentence as soon as it left my mouth, but I didn't take it back. Finally, he said, "Therapy is Thursday at 3. I saw it on the calendar." "You're still looking at the calendar?" "Yes." "Oh." The pleasure in that one syllable made my throat tighten. "I have to go," I said. "All right." He waited. So did I. "Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Mara." Mom invited me to Sunday lunch with unusual specificity. You are invited. You are not required to bring or cook anything. A second message followed. Luke is ordering food. Then, your father would like to see you. Then, after several minutes, I would too. I went. Walking into their house without a casserole dish felt indecent. My hands kept searching for something to carry. I had my purse and car keys. Nothing else. Mom opened the door and looked behind me. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." "You looked at my car." "I was making sure you locked it." "From the doorway? It's a high theft neighborhood now." A plastic bag of takeout containers covered the kitchen counter. Luke had ordered from a barbecue restaurant Dad liked, though Dad complained that smoked meat was an inefficient use of beef. Paige was setting the table. She smiled when she saw me. "You brought yourself," she said. Mom looked at her. "What?" Paige asked. "That's what the invitation said." Luke came from the living room carrying Dad's empty water glass. "He's been asking what time you'd get here since 11:30. I said 1. Exactly. He wanted to know which one. Dad sat in the recliner with his cane propped against his good side. The bruise along his hip had spread down one leg in shades of purple and yellow. He had buttoned his shirt one hole off. I bent to fix it. Then I stopped with my hand near the second button. "Your shirt's wrong," I said. Dad looked down. "Your mother did it." "I did not," Mom called from the kitchen. He began unbuttoning it with one hand. The movement pulled at his sore shoulder and he winced. "Do you want help?" I asked. He looked at me, surprised by the question. "Yes." I fixed the shirt. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." We ate at the dining table. Luke had ordered too much food and forgotten coleslaw. Mom said the pulled pork was sweet. Dad said it was supposed to be sweet. Mom said not that sweet. Paige ate quietly until I caught her smiling into her napkin. "What?" Mom asked. "Nothing." "You're smiling. I like the pork. It's too sweet. I like sweet." Mom looked pleased, as though Paige had finally confessed to a useful flaw. For 10 minutes, lunch felt almost normal. Luke told a story about a client who kept calling spreadsheets charts. Dad asked questions about Paige's work at an outpatient clinic and listened to the answers. Mom complained that the realtor wanted them to remove a lamp she had never liked until someone else suggested removing it. Then Dad dropped his fork. It landed beside his chair. 4 people moved. I was halfway out of my seat before I caught myself. Luke was closer. He picked up the fork and brought Dad a clean one. Dad looked at me. I picked up my water glass. After lunch, Mom began stacking plates. "Mara, can you?" She stopped. The whole table heard it. "Can I what?" I asked. Her hands tightened around the dishes. "Nothing. If you want help, ask me. I shouldn't have to ask my own daughter to carry plates. Then ask your son." Luke leaned back. "I'm sitting right here." "Yes," Mom said. "You are." He stood and took the stack from her. "Where do these go?" "The kitchen, Luke." "I meant after that. The dishwasher. Do you rinse them?" "Of course we rinse them," Dad said. "The new dishwasher says not to." "The new dishwasher is wrong," Mom replied. Paige began collecting glasses. I carried my own plate to the kitchen. Mom watched me set it by the sink. "Are you helping or making a statement?" she asked quietly. I carried my plate. "Which one?" "Mom." She turned on the faucet. I waited until the water was running, then said, "Do you want me to load the dishwasher?" She stared at the sink. "Yes." "All right." I did it because she had asked, not assigned. The difference was invisible to everyone except me. It still mattered. When the kitchen was clean, Dad fell asleep in the recliner. Luke and Paige left for a birthday dinner with her friends. Mom walked me to the door. "Can you stay a minute?" she asked. We sat on the front steps. The air smelled like damp leaves in someone's fireplace. Mom wrapped both hands around a mug of coffee she had brought outside, but did not drink. "You embarrassed me in there," she said. "I asked you to ask, in front of Paige. She was loading glasses. That's not the point." "What is the point?" Mom stared toward the street. "Everything feels like a trap now. If I ask you for something, I'm taking advantage. If I don't ask, you think I'm being passive-aggressive. I didn't say that. You don't have to say everything." There was no answer to that, so I waited. She rubbed her thumb over a chip in the mug's rim. "I was relieved when Luke skipped that paragraph," she said. "The words came so softly, I almost missed them." "What? I didn't know he had removed it. I thought your father changed his mind." She kept her eyes on the street. The paragraph said you kept food in the house because we were too tired to think. It made us sound helpless. You were exhausted. I was his wife. You were still exhausted. I should have been taking care of him. You were. Not the way you were. I understood then why she had minimized the omission before she even knew Luke's reason. My paragraph praised me, but it also named the vacuum I had stepped into. Dad's gratitude made her see her own fear. "Mom, nobody thought you failed him. I did." She said it with no self-pity, just fact. Dad's heart trouble had turned their house into a place where every sound carried a warning. Mom had slept in a chair beside him for weeks. She checked his breathing so often she barely slept. I had managed food and appointments because someone needed to function outside the fear. "You weren't supposed to do it alone," I said. "Neither were you." "No." She finally looked at me. "I let you do too much," she said. "It was such a relief when you walked in. You knew what questions to ask. You weren't scared. I was terrified. You didn't show it, because you were already scared enough for both of us." Mom's eyes filled. I had seen her cry at funerals, weddings, and the series finale of a show she claimed not to watch. I had almost never seen her cry because of something she had done. "I thought being strong made you feel good," she said. "Sometimes it did. What was I supposed to do?" "Luke wasn't made the same way." I looked at her. She heard it after she said it. "He needs more encouragement," she added weakly, "and I needed less?" "No. That's what happened. You could handle disappointment. That doesn't mean I should have gotten more of it." Mom set the mug beside her. "You make us sound cruel." "I think you loved me. I think you still love me. I also think you used the parts of me you admired until you stopped noticing they belonged to a person." She flinched. I hated that she flinched. Inside, Dad coughed. Mom turned toward the door automatically. He coughed again, then settled. She faced me. "How long are you going to keep doing this?" "Doing what?" "Changing everything." "I don't know. That isn't an answer. It's the only one I have." She wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand. "Your father can't take much more stress. The old machinery waited for me to step back into it. Then he should stop creating so much," I said. Mom gave a startled laugh. It broke into something wet and tired. "You are his daughter," she said. "I know." "No. I mean, you sound exactly like him when you're angry." That was not comforting. She picked up her mug and stood. "I'm going inside before he tries to carry something." I got into my car. Before I reached home, Mom sent me a photograph. The blue folder lay open on the kitchen table. Its crooked tabs had been replaced with printed labels. A yellow sticky note pointed to Dad's insurance card number. "Found it myself," she wrote. I typed, "Good job." Then I changed it. "I knew you could." Mom responded 3 minutes later. I did not ask for encouragement. I laughed so hard I had to pull into a grocery store parking lot. The next photograph she sent was of Dad standing in the physical therapy waiting room with his cane tucked under one arm and a paper cup of coffee in his hand. "Luke was late," she wrote. "How late?" 7 minutes. "Did they miss the appointment?" "No." "Then why are you telling me?" "Because I knew you would want to know." I looked at Dad's picture. He was scowling at the television mounted over the reception desk. "I didn't," I wrote. That was not entirely true. I wanted to know everything. I wanted to know whether Luke took the right entrance, whether Dad had eaten, whether Mom brought his updated medication list. The difference was that wanting to know no longer required turning the information into an assignment. Luke got Dad to every therapy session. He was late to 2. He forgot the ice pack once and bought a bag of frozen peas at a convenience store. Dad objected because the peas were food. "They're frozen vegetables," Luke told him in a group chat video. "They don't know what they are." "They're $6, Dad said off camera. "That's because I bought them at a gas station. You got robbed. You can file a police report after shoulder rotations." I watched the video twice. Dad's hip healed faster than his pride. He abandoned the cane after 9 days and hid it in the coat closet, where Mom found it and placed it beside his chair again. They moved it back and forth without acknowledging each other until Paige tied a red ribbon around the handle. When I visited, Dad said, "It looks ridiculous. You haven't lost it." That wasn't a problem. It was in the coat closet. I knew where it was. Mom called from the kitchen. He did not. Dad took the cane with him when he walked me to the door. Mom's folder stayed with Mom. She still called me with questions, but the questions became questions instead of instructions. "Does the referral number go on the therapy bill?" she asked one afternoon. "I think so." "You think?" "I don't have the bill in front of me. If I send you a picture, will you look?" "Yes." She sent the picture. I told her where to write the number. She wrote it herself. It was such a small adjustment that nobody outside our family would have recognized it as change. To us, it was continental drift. The house went under contract sooner than expected. Mom said this proved the realtor had priced it too low. Dad said it proved he had maintained it well. Luke said it proved people were desperate. I congratulated them. Mom waited, then asked, "Can you come Thursday and help me choose which photographs to pack separately? I don't want the movers handling the wedding album." The question was clear. The task was limited. "Yes," I said. She was quiet. "What?" "I thought you'd say no. I don't say no to everything. It feels like everything. That doesn't make it everything." "Thursday at 6? I'll be there." She said thank you before hanging up. The walls looked naked when I arrived. Nail holes dotted the pale rectangles where pictures had hung. The piano was gone. Donated to a church after Dad admitted that paying movers to transport an instrument nobody played was financially stupid. Mom sat at the dining table surrounded by photographs. She had organized them into piles labeled "Keep Close," "Storage," "Luke," "Mara," and "Unidentified." The unidentified pile contained 3 pictures of Aunt Carolyn. "I know who that is," I said. "I know too. I don't know why we have them." One showed Carolyn standing beside a fountain in Rome, looking angry at the water. "Send them to her. She'll think I'm making a point." "What point?" "I don't know. Carolyn finds her own." We worked for 2 hours. Mom asked before putting things in my pile. I said no to most of them. She accepted no, though occasionally she held a picture up to the light as if waiting for the image to argue. Near the bottom of a box, I found a photograph from Luke's college orientation. Dad and Luke stood outside a brick dorm building, both squinting into the sun. Dad had one hand on Luke's shoulder. Luke looked nervous and excited. "Give that to him," I said. "Mom took it from me. Your father won't like it." "Why?" "That whole year." It happened. He felt he failed Luke. Dad did? Your brother left school. That isn't the same thing. Your father thought if he had prepared him better. She trailed off and placed the photograph in Luke's pile. I thought about the speech. Luke hearing Dad's praise of me as a case against him. Dad hearing Luke's struggles as evidence against himself. All of us had been living inside comparisons nobody would admit making. The door from the garage opened. Luke came in carrying 4 pizza boxes. "Dinner," he announced. Mom checked the clock. "It's 8. Yes. That's when people eat after they've been sorting photos for 2 hours. He got that from me," I said. Luke put the boxes on the counter. "Sunday at my place. 1 o'clock. Mom looked suspicious. "Why?" "Because you have no dining table. We have a folding table. Great. Sunday at my place and you can bring your folding table. What are you serving?" "Food." "What kind?" "The edible kind." Dad entered behind him, moving carefully but without the cane. "He's making lasagna." Mom's expression changed to alarm. "You don't know how to make lasagna. I have a recipe." "From where?" "The internet." She looked at me. I raised a photograph of Aunt Carolyn in front of my face. Luke's apartment was cleaner than I expected. I had been there before, but usually on evenings when 4 pairs of shoes occupied the entry and every drinking glass he owned had migrated to the coffee table. Paige had moved in recently without making a family announcement. Her books filled half the shelves, and a green ceramic bowl by the door held both of their keys. The lasagna had too much cheese and not enough sauce. Dad ate 2 servings. "The noodles are overcooked," he said during the second. Luke put down his fork. "You are eating them voluntarily. I'm telling you for next time." "There may not be a next time." Mom said, "Don't be sensitive. He's trying to help." Luke looked at me. I drank my water. Dad added, "Mara always boils them a minute less than the box says." There it was. So ordinary, Dad did not hear it. Luke leaned back. "Good for Mara." "Alan," Mom said. "What?" "Nothing." "No," I said. "Not nothing." Dad turned toward me. "Why did you bring me into it?" I said how you cook noodles. "You used me to tell him he did it wrong. I was giving advice. You were making a comparison." Luke pointed his fork at me. "Thank you." Dad frowned. "I didn't compare anybody." "You said she does it better," Luke said. "I said she cooks them less, which means better. Only if you don't want mushy noodles." Paige looked at the lasagna on her plate. I said, "Dad, this is what Luke was talking about." "When?" "At the coffee shop." Dad's eyes moved between us. "You two had a meeting about me." "We had coffee," Luke said. "You came up. Of course I did." Mom set down her napkin. "Can we have one meal without analyzing the family?" "We tried that at the retirement dinner," I said. The words changed the air. Luke's face tightened, but he didn't look away. Dad said, "That was unnecessary." "No, it wasn't." I apologized for not saying something. "You apologized that I was hurt. I said I should have handled it differently. You did." And Luke apologized for taking the page. Mom looked at Luke. "You did?" "Yes." What did she say? That she believed me. Mom waited. "That was all?" "It was enough for then," Luke said. "He surprised me." Dad pushed his plate away. "What does any of this have to do with noodles?" Luke laughed. "Everything has to do with noodles. That's the problem." "Then explain it to me. You praise Mara when you're mad at me." Dad stared at him. "You always have," Luke continued. "Mara calls. Mara remembers. Mara follows through. You say it like you're complimenting her, but half the time you're looking at me. I praise your sister because she deserves it. I'm not saying she doesn't. Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying you use her like a ruler, and then you act surprised that I resent being measured." Dad's face went still. I felt the old urge to soften Luke's words. I did not. Dad looked at me. "Is that what you think?" I didn't until he said it. "And now?" "Now I think he's right." Dad pushed his chair back. "So the speech was my fault." "No," Luke said. Taking out the page was my fault. You just said I wrote it to attack you. I said that's how it felt. That isn't what you said. It is, Dad. You heard what you wanted to hear and changed my words without asking. Yes. The directness stopped Dad. Luke set his fork on his plate. I was wrong, but I was wrong inside something we've all been doing for years. Mom said, your father was proud of Mara. I know. Then why couldn't you let her have that? Luke looked at me, because I thought her getting something meant I was losing it. No one spoke. Paige reached under the table and rested her hand on Luke's knee. Dad looked down at his plate. I never asked either of you to compete. No, I said. You just kept score out loud. Dad's head came up. I almost apologized. Instead, I took another bite of overcooked lasagna. Mom began clearing plates before anyone was finished. Paige stopped her. I'll get those, she said. Mom let go with visible reluctance. Dad stood. I need some air. Luke's apartment had no yard, only a narrow balcony overlooking the parking lot. Dad stepped outside and closed the glass door behind him. Mom watched him through it. His shoulder is hurting. How can you tell? Luke asked. He's holding it. He's crossing his arms, with his right hand over the left shoulder. Luke looked. Oh. For a moment, I thought Mom would ask me to go after him. She didn't. She opened a container and began packing leftover lasagna. Luke rubbed both hands over his face. Well, first Sunday went great. The garlic bread was good, I said. It came frozen. Play to your strengths. He laughed into his hands. Dad stayed on the balcony for 10 minutes. When he came back, he sat beside Mom and ate the rest of his lasagna cold. He did not apologize. He also did not criticize another bite. The next Sunday, Mom hosted lunch at their rental townhouse using the folding table. She made chili. Luke brought wine. I brought nothing because Mom had specifically told me not to, then spent the first 5 minutes fighting the urge to invent a reason why I hadn't. Dad talked about the weather. Nobody mentioned noodles. Before I left, he asked if I still had the marked speech draft. Yes. Why? Because it's mine. I didn't say it wasn't. I waited. He looked toward the kitchen, where Mom was explaining the thermostat to Luke. I want to talk to you about it, Dad said. We're talking now. Not here. Where? The house. Friday afternoon. The house is almost empty. I know. Something in his voice made me agree. At 3 on Friday, I pulled into the old driveway. Dad's car was parked near the garage. The maple trees had dropped most of their leaves, and the front windows looked dark without the curtains. Dad waited for me inside the nearly empty living room. He had brought 2 folding chairs. On one of them lay the leather folder. I closed the front door and the sound traveled through the house. Without rugs, curtains, or furniture, every room had an echo. The living room walls were patched where the photographs had hung. Sunlight showed pale rectangles on the floor where the couch and piano had protected the wood. Dad pointed to the empty chair. Sit. You make every invitation sound like a deposition. I don't know what that means. You do. I wasn't sure you'd come. You asked me to. That hasn't guaranteed anything lately. I sat. Dad remained standing. His shoulder had improved, but he still moved his left arm carefully when he forgot anyone was watching. He wore jeans and the old gray sweatshirt Mom hated because the collar had stretched into an oval. The leather folder rested on the other chair. What's that doing here? I asked. Your brother gave it back. It's yours. I know. Dad picked it up, opened it, and removed the pages. The brass clip made a dry snapping sound in the empty room. 1, 2, 3, 5. He had kept them exactly as Luke left them. I tried to find the other page after the dinner, he said. Luke threw it away at the gas station before he got there. Did he tell you that? Eventually. Dad aligned the edges of the papers against his palm. I asked if you still had the draft because I wanted to see what I wrote. You don't remember? I remember the paragraph. I don't remember every word. The draft was in my tote. I had almost left it at home because bringing it felt theatrical. Then I had pictured Dad saying he needed to see it and me having to return another day. I took it out. He held out his hand. For a second, I didn't give it to him. Dad noticed. I'm not going to tear it up. I know. Do you? No. His hand lowered. I unfolded the pages myself and passed them over. Dad read in silence. When he reached the 4th page, he sat in the chair beside the folder. The paper looked fragile in his hands. His blue markings covered it. The boxed paragraph was darker than everything around it. He read it twice. Then he said it was true. I looked toward the front window. Dad touched the words, "Keep this. Important. That's what I wanted you to know." No. You wanted everyone to know. I wanted both. Then when Luke removed it, you let me have the private half. Dad rubbed his thumb along the fold. The private half is still true. That's the problem. He frowned. You think truth counts the same no matter where you put it, I said. You think if you appreciate me in your head, it balances what you do in the room. I told you I appreciated you. You wrote it down. Then, when it disappeared, you protected the person who took it. I was trying not to humiliate your brother, and I understand why. Dad looked surprised. I understand Luke felt that paragraph was aimed at him. I understand you were emotional. I understand there were coworkers watching, and stopping him would have been awkward. I understand every reason you had. Then what are we doing? I'm telling you understanding doesn't erase the cost. He leaned back, the folding chair creaking beneath him. I don't know what you want me to say that I haven't already said. I didn't come for a sentence. You came because I asked. Yes? What's the difference? I looked around the empty room. On the wall beside the hallway, pencil marks showed where Dad had measured us years apart. Someone had painted over most of them, but faint lines remained. Luke was written beside a mark higher than mine, even though he was younger. Dad had made a joke about him catching up. I want to know if you understand what happened, I said. Not at the dinner, before it. Dad followed my gaze to the wall. You think I favored Luke? You did favor Luke. I loved you both. Those aren't opposites. His jaw tightened. I had expected anger. Instead, he looked tired. When he left college, Dad said, I said things I shouldn't have. I know. No, you know what he told you. I was in the kitchen for some of it. Dad looked at the floor. Luke had come home midway through his 2nd year carrying 2 duffel bags and a plastic laundry basket. He had not failed out, though Dad told relatives he had. Luke said he could not go back. Dad asked what he planned to do with his life, then asked again louder when Luke had no answer. I had stood between them with my palms out as if directing traffic. I told him he was weak, Dad said. I remembered. I told him he quit when things got hard. I said no employer would trust someone who walked away. You were angry. I was cruel. The word did not come easily to him. Dad folded the draft along its old crease, then opened it again. He left that night, he said. Wouldn't answer my calls. Your mother blamed me. You blamed me. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. There it was. Inherited. Dad continued. When he finally started talking to us again, I made up my mind I wasn't going to push him away a second time. So you stopped expecting anything. I encouraged him. You protected him from consequences. Sometimes, most times. I thought he needed room to recover. For 14 years? Dad gave me a sharp look. You make it sound simple. It wasn't simple, it was just consistent. He looked back at the draft. When Luke didn't come home after my heart trouble, I was angry, he said. I didn't say it. You called him every night. I wanted him there. He had work, so did you. The words sat between us. Dad swallowed. You changed your schedule, he said. You drove me everywhere. You paid the electric bill that month. You paid me back, eventually. You didn't know about the groceries. He looked at me. What about them? I put them on my credit card for 3 months. Your mother said she was paying you. She thought you were. His face changed. It wasn't a fortune, I said. I'm not telling you because I want the money. I'm telling you how easy it was for everybody not to ask. Why didn't you say something? I laughed once. Dad winced. You were ashamed you couldn't drive, I said. Mom was barely sleeping. Luke sent a fruit basket. Which conversation was I supposed to interrupt with a reimbursement request? You should have told me." "I know." The admission surprised him. "I helped build it too," I said. "I made everything look easy because I wanted you to feel safe. I wanted Mom to stop crying in the pantry. I wanted Luke to come home without a fight, and I liked being the one who could fix things." Dad studied me. "That's hard to give up," he said. "Yes. Then this isn't all our fault." "No. But you were the parents." He looked away. A car door shut outside. Voices passed on the sidewalk, then faded. Dad stood and walked to the wall with the height marks. He touched the line beside Luke's name. "I worried about him more," he said. "I know. You didn't seem to need it." "I did. Not the same way." "No. My needs were less disruptive." Dad turned. I had not planned that sentence. It left him with nothing to defend against. "When you were upset," he said slowly, "you got quiet." "Yes. When Luke was upset, everybody knew." "Yes. I thought quiet meant you had it handled. It meant I knew being louder would make things harder." He closed his eyes for a moment. "I saw that at the dinner," he said. "What?" When he skipped the page. "I saw your face and you didn't move. You didn't interrupt. You didn't ask what happened. You just sat there. So you thought I was fine?" "No." His voice cracked slightly. "I thought you would survive it." I looked down at my hands. "And I thought he might not survive being exposed," Dad continued. "Not in that room, not with his boss there. So you chose the child you thought was more breakable." "Yes." The answer hurt less than the explanations had. Dad came back to the chairs and sat. "I have spent a lot of years trying to make up for the way I hurt Luke," he said. "I didn't notice I was doing it by hurting you." I pressed my thumb into the center of my palm. "You notice sometimes." He nodded. "Yes, that mattered too." He was not asking ignorance to absolve him. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not that your feelings were hurt. I am sorry I stayed quiet. I'm sorry I kept asking you to carry things because I knew you would. I'm sorry I called that strength when it was convenient for me." My eyes burned. Dad looked at the draft instead of at me, which was kind. "I can't promise I'll get it right," he said. "I apparently don't know when noodles are just noodles. They're almost never just noodles. That seems exhausting." "It is." He reached into the leather folder and removed a yellow, legal-size sheet, folded in thirds. "I wrote this before you came." He handed it to me. His handwriting had grown shakier since the retirement speech, but every word was legible. He had rewritten the missing paragraph from memory. Some sentences were different. He wrote that I had protected his dignity when he had very little, and that I had made care look so ordinary he had forgotten it was a choice. At the bottom, separated by a line, he had added, "You should never have had to disappear for this family to stay comfortable." I read it twice. "Mom helped you with that sentence," I said. Dad looked offended. "She corrected the grammar." "So she helped." "She moved one word." "Which word?" "That isn't important." It was the first thing that made me laugh. Dad's mouth lifted, then settled. "I thought I could read it Sunday," he said. "At dinner." "No." He blinked. "No, I don't want another speech. I want to correct what happened. Then correct it without making me sit in a chair while people look at me. What do I do with it?" "You already gave it to me." "That doesn't feel like enough." "It isn't." Dad leaned back. I folded the handwritten page and placed it with the draft. "What would be enough?" he asked. "I don't know if there is one thing. That's inconvenient. For you." "Yes." At least he admitted it. "The next time Luke forgets something," I said, "don't ask me to do it. What if it's important? Ask him again. What if he still doesn't do it? Let him be the person who didn't." Dad considered that. "And the next time Mom hands me a folder, don't stand there quietly. She'll be angry." "Yes. She gets very unreasonable when she's angry." "I know." Dad looked toward the empty kitchen. "You're asking a lot. I learned from the best." He gave a small, tired laugh. We sat in the vacant living room while late sunlight moved across the floor. Nothing dramatic happened. He did not ask me to forgive him, and I did not say I had. When we stood to leave, Dad picked up the leather folder. "Sunday at 1, he said. "Last dinner here before closing. Who's cooking?" "Your mother." "That sounds dangerous. Luke is bringing the main dish." "That sounds worse. You're not bringing anything." I looked at him. He shifted the folder under his arm. "Your mother already assigned you dessert." I told her no. It was a small thing. I felt it anyway. Dad opened the front door, then paused. "She said you always make the pie." "What did you say?" "I said Luke agreed to bring dessert last week." "Did he?" "No." I laughed. Dad took out his phone. "Then I guess I'd better ask him." Luke answered on the 4th ring. Dad put him on speaker. "What?" Luke said. "Sunday at 1. You're bringing dessert." A pause. "I'm already bringing the main dish. Your mother says we need pie." "We don't need pie." Dad looked at me. I kept my face neutral. "Apparently we do," he said. "What kind?" "Apple." Mom's voice came faintly through Luke's end. "He must have been at the townhouse." "She says Mara makes pecan." Dad closed his eyes. I raised my eyebrows. "Apple," he repeated. "Why don't you ask Mara?" "Because I'm asking you." Another pause. "Did she put you up to this?" "No." "Is she standing there?" Dad turned away from me as if that changed the answer. "That isn't relevant. It's extremely relevant. Bring a pie, fine, and ice cream. This is becoming 2 assignments." Dad hung up. He slid the phone into his pocket with the satisfaction of a man who had completed dangerous work. "You know he's going to buy it," I said. "Pie is pie." I stared at him. "What?" he asked. "You criticized a bakery pie for 40 minutes last Thanksgiving. It had a soggy bottom. Pie is pie." Dad picked up the leather folder. "I'm growing." He locked the front door behind us. When I arrived Sunday, there were no cars in the driveway except my parents'. I checked the clock on my dashboard. 1:03. I had spent most of the morning fighting the impulse to make something. At 11, I took flour from my cabinet. At 11:10, I put it back. At noon, I stood in a grocery store holding a bottle of wine, then returned it to the shelf because Luke was still the person who brought wine. I walked into the house with my purse and nothing else. Mom stood in the kitchen beside a pan of green beans. Most of the cabinets were empty and every movement echoed. A single wooden spoon, 2 knives, and a roll of paper towels lay on the counter, like equipment from a cooking competition with a very low budget. Her eyes dropped to my hands. She caught herself. "You're late," she said instead. 3 minutes. Your father said 1. I was in the driveway at 1:02. From the living room, Dad called, "That doesn't count." I laughed. Mom turned back to the stove. "Luke isn't here." I noticed. "He has the food," I assumed. "We have green beans. They smell good. They'll be cold by the time he arrives. Then turn them off. They'll get limp. They're already cooked." Mom gave me a look. "Would you call him?" The question settled between us. Before I answered, Dad came into the kitchen carrying a stack of paper plates. "Luke said he'd bring the food," he said. "Luke will bring the food. I'm asking her to call, not cook. She doesn't need to call. He knows what time it is." What if something happened? "He's late, Diane." Nothing happened. How do you know? Because he's Luke. It was criticism, but it was not rescue. Dad set the plates on the folding table. "Sit down, Mara." Mom watched me. I sat. It felt almost rude. The folding table stood in the empty dining room beneath the light fixture Dad had once sworn he would replace. 5 mismatched chairs surrounded it. 2 metal folding chairs, 1 dining chair Mom had kept back from the movers, and 2 lawn chairs with faded canvas seats. Dad handed me a stack of napkins. "Can you put these out?" "Yes." It was a direct question, a finite task. I placed one on each plate and returned the extras. Mom called from the kitchen. "The forks are packed." Dad said, "Luke packed them. He packed every utensil. Then he'll figure it out. People can't eat lasagna with their hands." Did he say lasagna? No. He said main dish. Dad turned to me. "Do you know what he's bringing?" "No." Mom opened a drawer she had already checked. We should have kept the plastic forks. Luke threw them away, Dad said. He said they were cracked. They were cracked. Not all of them. Dad looked toward the front window. When he gets here, he can go to the store. Mom's mouth tightened. She wanted me to volunteer. I could feel the space she had left for it. I unfolded and refolded my napkin. At 1:19, Luke's SUV pulled into the driveway. Mom exhaled. Finally. Luke came through the front door backward, carrying a foil pan. Paige followed with 2 grocery bags and a bakery box balanced against her chest. "Sorry," Luke called. The first pie slid off the seat. Dad stood. "What happened to it?" "It became a floor pie." "Is that the one you brought?" "No, Dad. You bought another?" I went back. "That's why you're late?" "That and the forks." He lifted a plastic bag in one hand. Mom looked at Dad. Dad looked at me. I kept folding my napkin. Luke set the foil pan on the counter. "Baked ziti. It needs 10 minutes uncovered." Mom lifted the foil. "This is a lot of cheese." Luke closed his eyes. "Hello, Mom. I'm only saying." Dad came into the kitchen. "Put it in the oven. It's preheating. Then wait. I understand ovens. You asked which wall the elevator was on. That was a hospital parking garage." Paige set the pie box on the table. "It's apple. It has a structurally sound bottom." Dad looked pleased. Luke carried the pan to the oven. When he bent to put it in, Mom said, "Turn it lengthwise. It fits this way. It'll heat unevenly. It's an oven, not a wind tunnel." "Luke?" He straightened. For a moment, the old exit appeared in his face. I saw him imagining setting down the pan, grabbing his keys, and leaving the rest of us to prove him right. Then he turned the dish lengthwise. "There," he said. "Thermodynamics restored." Mom kissed his cheek. He looked startled. While the ziti heated, Paige and I walked through the empty rooms. The bedroom where Mom and Dad had slept held only 2 indentations in the carpet where the bed frame had rested. In the smaller room Dad used as an office, a square of unfaded paint showed where his retirement plaque had hung for less than a month. "You okay?" Paige asked. "I think so." Luke was very serious about the pie. I heard there was a casualty. He tried to save it. "How?" He scooped it off the floor with the bakery box. That sounds like Luke. He stood there for a full minute, deciding whether anyone would know. I laughed. Paige smiled, then glanced toward the doorway. "He's been different," she said. "Since the speech, since you stopped fixing the things he left." I waited. "He's more stressed," she added, "and more annoying." That also sounds like Luke. But he follows through now. Mostly. Mostly is a big improvement. He thinks you're waiting for him to mess up. I'm not. I told him that. Did he believe you? No. From the dining room, Luke called, "I can hear you whispering." Paige called back, "We're discussing the floor pie. You swore that was private. We ate ziti from paper plates with plastic forks. The green beans were slightly limp. Mom apologized for them 3 times. The pie had a crisp bottom, which Dad acknowledged with the seriousness of a building inspector. Conversation moved around the house. Mom remembered the first meal she had cooked in that kitchen and claimed it was pot roast. Dad said it was pork chops. Luke said he remembered neither because he had not been born. Mom told him not every story required his participation. At one point, Dad tapped his fork against his plate. The room quieted. I tensed. He noticed. "I'm not making a speech," he said. Luke looked at me. Dad continued, "I just want to thank Luke for lunch and Paige for helping him. I bought the replacement pie," Paige said. Dad nodded, especially the pie. Luke placed one hand over his heart. Dad looked at me. "And thank you for coming, Mara. Nothing more. No comparison, no list of what I had done. My name existed by itself." "You're welcome," I said. After dinner, Mom began gathering plates. "Mara, would you take the leftovers to the kitchen?" Before I could answer, Dad said, "Luke brought the pans." Mom looked at him. So? So Luke can pack them." Luke's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Mara is already standing, Mom said. I was. I had risen to get my purse. Dad looked at me, then back at her. She's leaving. The room went still. It was not a grand defense. He did not mention the speech or the blue-boxed paragraph. He simply refused to let convenience become my assignment. Luke stood and took the foil pan. Fine, he said. Where's the lid? Mom pointed toward the kitchen. You brought it. I brought foil. That won't travel. It traveled here. The seal is broken now. Foil doesn't lose its memory, Mom. He carried the pan away. Dad remained at the table, pretending not to watch me. I put on my coat. Thank you, I told him quietly. He nodded. Mom came over holding the last framed photograph left in the house, the wedding picture with the silver frame and dented corner. Would you wrap this? She asked. Not today. I mean when we get to the townhouse. I don't have the right paper. You can buy picture wrap at the storage place. I know. She was asking whether I would help, not assuming I would. Yes, I said. Bring it over Tuesday. Are you busy Tuesday? Trivia at 7. I'll come at 6. All right. Luke returned from the kitchen carrying the pan and a grocery bag full of trash. Next month is your turn, he said to me. My turn for what? Sunday. I looked at Dad. He raised both hands. I didn't make the schedule. Luke said, You can order food. Apparently that counts. It does. Good. Because I'm never boiling a noodle again. You didn't boil those, Mom said. They were baked. Luke stared at the ceiling. I laughed all the way to my car. The closing happened the following Friday. Mom cried in the driveway after handing over the keys, then criticized the new owner's welcome mat. Dad stood beside her with one hand on her back. Luke brought coffee. I arrived without a checklist. No one asked for one. The townhouse took time to become theirs. Mom arranged the furniture 3 different ways. Dad complained that the downstairs bathroom fan was too loud, called me to ask what I thought he should do, then stopped himself. I'll call maintenance, he said. That sounds right. I don't need you to agree. Then why did you call? He considered it. I wanted to hear your voice. That was new. Sometimes Mom still texted me photographs of bills with no question attached. I replied, What do you need? Sometimes she answered, Nothing. I handled it. Sometimes she asked for help, and I gave it if I wanted to. Luke missed one therapy pickup because he entered the wrong time in the family calendar. Dad took a cab. Luke apologized to him, not to me. Sunday lunches rotated. Mom hosted chili at the townhouse. Luke ordered Thai food and forgot Dad hated coconut milk. I hosted once and made the roast again because feeding people had never been the injury. Being required to feed them was. The first draft stayed in my apartment. I put Dad's handwritten page with it and kept both in the wooden jewelry box beneath the birthday cards. I did not need to show them to anyone. The proof had changed. It was no longer proof that Luke erased me. It was proof that Dad had finally understood what his silence cost. One Sunday, trivia ran late because Tessa refused to concede that Annapolis was the capital of Maryland, even after 3 people showed her a map. I arrived at Luke and Paige's apartment 25 minutes after 1. For once, no one called. I opened the door and found Dad grating cheese, Mom setting glasses on the table, Paige making salad, and Luke standing at the stove. You're late, Luke said. Traffic. On Sunday. Terrible. He pointed a wooden spoon at me. Sit down. The sauce needs 5 minutes. Mom looked at my empty hands. Then she pulled out a chair. I sat while Luke finished cooking. Nobody asked what I had brought.